Good evening. Well, that was quite the introduction, Mr. Real. It sounded like we had an echo on the music. Was that intentional?
It was accidental, but I had the share screen up with its audio being shared, and every time that happens, it does it. I hate myself as soon as I saw it. And it was towards the end. I finally muted it right at the very end, but it doesn't do any good then, does it?
No, but for future reference, the answer is always yes, I did that on purpose.
Okay, I did that on purpose, everybody.
I meant to do that. How are you doing, Mr. Real?
Life is good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here tonight and to talk a little bit about what some of our detractors. Yes, we actually have detractors. I know it's hard to believe, but talk a little bit about what they've been saying about us.
Yeah, it'll be, I think, a lot of fun. There is the certain crowd. These are the folks that are sort of the opposite of the neo-apologists. There's the regular apologists, Dan Peterson and Lou Midgley and those guys. Then there's the neo-apologists, the Patrick Masons and Terrell Givens of the world, who are they're just so kind. They are. And, Givens, I think, has referenced Shakespeare a few times. I don't think he's read as much as Radio Free Mormon, that's for sure. But
might have, I don't know.
These guys have sort of the ones we're going to talk about tonight are the folks who sort of come to apologetics from a very different angle. And it'll be a blast to show some of these clips.
I know we're focusing mostly on the Midnight Mormons, who now have a new podcast. Well, at least that's a new name called Psych Ward Radio. And they cover things like aliens, abductions, werewolves, vampires, the harrowing of hell, things like that. They've actually, I think, become the Mormon apologetic version of the National Enquirer.
Yeah. When you look at some of the topics they cover, in fact, let me see if I can, we'll put the thumbnail back up, but in their stuff, I mean, you can see the videos that they've got at Ward Radio, and they cover the kinds of things that Art Bell covered for years and years in the middle of the night.
Less effectively.
Less effectively is true. Not quite the following that Art Bell had, but you know what? They do pretty good compared to how we're doing.
Yeah, they do. They're doing great.
The believers seem to really get a kick out of the charisma, I think, is their maybe secret sauce.
Oh, charisma? You think so? Well, yeah. I always have to remind myself that in the world of IQs, 100 being the average, it means that half the people are below it. And I think that they are collecting from that herd.
Sometimes you do have to remind yourself that half the population is there. So, anyway, there you go, my friends. And the other half is watching Mormonism live.
Right, absolutely. So, and I think our live chats, if you compare the live chats, you'll see that comes out really, really quickly, the difference in intelligence level between the two audiences. Nice. So let me say this, that about a month ago, over at Psych Ward Radio, they decided they would do a 20-minute or 21-minute episode about me and about my Sunday school. And I had not watched that. I was aware that it had gone up, but I really didn't care to hear about what they had to say about me. And then we were thinking about what are we going to do this week? And I thought, well, maybe this would be a good time to visit that, not revisit it, because I never visited it the first time, to revisit that, see what they had to say, and talk about a few things there, as well as other things that they've said, which may or may not bear any resemblance to the truth. So we'll go ahead and we'll analyze that in our way of doing things. So do we have the first clip? If there's nothing else that you wanted to say, Bill?
Nope. Let me put that first clip up. So here we are.
So there's Brad Whitbeck looking like he just sat on something wet and gooey. And there is Cardinellis.
Yeah, who's a little gooey himself. Here we go. All right, so here's the first clip.
Oh yeah, that's talking about.
Oh, that was a channel. Oh, dude, I haven't seen the whole thing yet, but it seems so pernicious, bro. Like he's literally, like it's literal wolf in sheep's clothing stuff. What's the number one rule of anti-Mormons? It's the very first rule in my list of 30. They never refute scripture. They only fulfill it. They only fulfill it, right? And now you literally have the top, probably one of the top 5 North American anti-Mormons, just literally fulfilling the definition of wolf in sheep's clothing. Have you seen this, Kwaku? Have you seen it yet?
I saw one like part of one episode.
Dude, I've only seen like 30 seconds of it because somebody saw a link. But here, maybe we can react to this.
I think that's
I'm
the end of
going
it, right?
into. I think he called it Mormon Sunday.
Yeah, Mormon Sunday School. That's what I called it. Absolutely. And first off, Bill,
Yeah.
if I were starving to death, I would not eat something on the air.
No.
Okay.
No.
And even if I were starving to death, I wouldn't do it. So if I were to ever eat anything, please, you have my permission to track me down and kill me, because that is, in my book, the height of unprofessionalism.
You know, I think we all have something to drink to wet our lips, right?
Speaking of
I've been
which,
doing this 12 years, and I don't think I've ever eaten a sandwich or some Doritos or a banana cream pie on the air. I thought it was cool. They named you as one of the top 5 North American anti-Mormons out there.
yeah, I
That's
was a bit
pretty cool.
disappointed at that. You know, as their show goes on and they pick up momentum and enthusiasm, Cardin will promote me over the course of a few minutes to the top one. Okay, I'll be number 1, numero uno, before you know it. And I think we have a clip of that. I was also really shocked at their lack of preparation to discuss a subject, any subject. This subject has to be me and the Mormon Sunday School. But honestly, Kwaku saying, yeah, I think I saw part of one of them. And then Cardin, the one who's bringing the subject up in the first place, says he's seen 30 seconds of one. And yet they consider themselves in a position to be able to comment intelligently about what's in it. I thought that was remarkable too.
Yeah, this happens. This happens over and over. When you look at any time they address we did an episode on straw man versus steel man, and it was in reaction to something they said, and what they said at the time. They never actually investigated the actual issue. Then we did our response video, and then they did a response to our response video, and they also never watched all of what we did. They seem to come to these conversations often speaking to it at a superficial level, just confirming to their audience that the audience need not worry about what's being addressed there, that they're right and folks like us are wrong, but they spend so little time actually understanding the material.
Right. And I think it shows.
Yeah.
But to have them actually say it. Now, I will tell you that there have been times when we have had people on the show, and I'm not going to mention any names, who may have authored a book that we're talking about. And there are some times I've gotten through the entire book. There are other times that I have not gotten through the entire book. Okay. But I don't announce it on the air. All right. And I do spend a lot of hours, and I compare it also when they're talking about, well, I've looked at 30 seconds of this. So let's go ahead and do an episode on it. With actually the hours and hours that I spend, the hours and hours that you spend in preparation for every single Mormonism live.
Yeah, I'll just add, you're being humble. Whenever we've covered,
it was
an author-
unintentional.
No, I don't know. Whenever we've covered an author, I'll take Lars Nelson for a minute.
Yeah.
You ordered the book and you spent a week reading essentially the entire thing.
I did read the entire thing, every word of that one.
Yeah, and I think every time we've had a conversation with somebody, you've done an immense amount of prep. So yeah, you could say, hey, I didn't read the whole book. And yes, you wouldn't say it on the air, but by far, as I juxtapose the prep you put in on an author or a scholar or a topic that we do compared to what these guys sort of self-admit or show by the way in which they cover it, is night and day difference.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's a pep rally where everybody already knows who they're supposed to root for. And so they just sort of go in and root for the home team and boo the other side, which is me in this case. So that's what we have here. Are we ready to go to the next one?
Yep, here we go.
Let me see here. I'm going to bring up my slides as well. So I have the, this is the one that starts at timestamp 419 and goes to 626. Because the reason that they're very, very concerned about me is the fact I'm calling this Mormon Sunday School, Radio Free Mormon Sunday School, because apparently their concern is for the children. And that there are children out there who might be lured into watching Mormon Sunday School, thinking that it's an official production of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and hear all these negative things about the church when they were expecting positive things about the church. And therefore, I am a wolf in sheep's clothing who is going to lure them away. Oh, by the way, it was in that last clip that you already played where Cardin said that I'm literally a wolf in sheep's clothing. Now, of course, this is one of my pet peeves. I may be literally many things, but I am not literally a wolf in sheep's clothing, Cardin. Okay? You might want to retire that word from your vocabulary, along with the word codified. So just stop using those words, because obviously you can't use them correctly in a sentence, all right? You may think I'm figuratively a wolf in sheep's clothing, and that would be a matter of opinion. But literally, no. Nobody's opinion matters on that. I am not literally a wolf in sheep's clothing.
I just don't think Cardinellis is the kind of guy who won a spelling bee or a any sort of English class, knew the definitions, knew how to spell words. He just doesn't come across as that kind of guy. So I think we should get him some slack. He may not know what the word literally means.
He was in ROTC, learning the proper way to display the American flag on a United States soldier's uniform. That's what I think he was doing.
And a bulletproof vest. By the way, folks, notice at the bottom, some of this is what RFM was pointing to when we first started, that they are sort of like the National Enquirer. They're like the tabloid magazines. You've got the Garden of Eden. They've got Shocking Secrets, Harrowing Hell. They just seem to cover sort of strange things. And this is even the best one. There was another one earlier before we started that had several other topics on the screen. And they just cover sort of the outskirts of Mormonism, nothing really serious, and sort of just tease the audience that some major thing's going to be talked about. And it turns out to be some little issue that plays very little role in the truth of Mormonism.
Another thing that was interesting is that they titled their video on me debunking. They were debunking me, but they don't spend any time debunking anything that I say. Instead, they spend all of their effort and all of their venom on the format.
Yeah, and we'll see that right here.
This is some evil and pernicious stuff. Like, this is really kind of up there with why so many of like the public school issues have become an issue, because like parents are worried about activist teachers and activist high school counselors like just stealing their kids' minds away from them. You know what I'm saying? By all these weird laws that are passed where it's like, oh, we don't have to release medical records to anybody but the kids, but I can talk to them at school while you're gone and away at work. You know, it's like just this really creepy, weird thing where it's like, why are you trying to steal my kids out from underneath me? You know? So anyway, look, let's see what he says. This is just pernicious, man. So here's just our reaction to RFM's Sunday School, very first video they published. There looks like they're 12 or 13 videos in. Introduction of the Book of Mormon. Come follow me, RFM Sunday School. Go.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Mormon Sunday School with Radio Free Mormon. What I'm going to be doing in this...
Okay, I'm sorry, but this is already wildly dishonest. Like, this is wildly dishonest. Because if you're one of the number one anti-Mormons and you're not self-representing is anti-Mormon material, this is no different than the neo-Nazis that used to buy all of the URLs for Martin Luther King and Marcus Garvey and Malcolm X and some of the early civil rights leaders and some of the early big Jewish rabbis, and they would make websites that would purport to be biographies on them, and then all it would do was list all the crimes they committed and all the prostitutes they got with, and then all of the debunked stereotypes and so on and so forth. For the number one anti-Mormon to really just self-identify as Sunday School and not as anti-Mormon, I just find wildly disingenuous at best, straight up creepy and dishonest at worst. Brad.
It's like what John...
I just want to say, you went from being in the top 5,
yes,
to being
one of the top
ones,
to being
the number one anti-Mormon.
Yeah,
you grew like just in a matter of minutes. You skyrocketed to the top of the charts.
That's how popular I'm becoming in real time.
It's because of this deception in Mormon Sunday School.
Yeah, and so I wanted to get your take on this, that I'm being deceptive and I'm stealing Cardin's kids out from under him. What they're doing underneath him in the first place, I have no idea. Maybe it'd be a good thing if somebody stole them out from under him. But regardless, stealing kids away under false pretenses. What do you think about that?
So I know that when you came to me wanting to do this project, you reached out to me and you said, hey, Bill, I'm thinking about this idea where I kind of follow along in the Come Follow Me manual, and we talk about what they're talking about in the lessons, but that I share the things that no one else is willing to say that's in there, cool insights that you make, as well as connections with Mormonism that just the average Sunday school isn't going to cover. And when you did that, I said, man, it's a brilliant idea. I love it. Let's see if we can't help you kind of put this together. And I suggested that you call it LDS, so Latter Day Sunday School. I thought that that would be more attractive to the believer, which I thought would be the audience you were aiming for. What you ended up doing is reaching out to me and saying, no, I don't want to do that. I want it to be Mormon Sunday School, which already, again, we'll show some of the data. I know you've got a slide that sort of points to this, but again, Mormon is a victory for Satan. Every believing Mormon today knows that if someone uses the word Mormon, their job is to correct that and to say, hey, whoa, we're not Mormon. We're the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And that's happened to me already 100 times since the church made that shift, where people have corrected me or others in a conversation about the use of the word Mormon. You can't signal to your audience any more clearly that something is not quite believing here in terms of faithfulness than to reject the LDS use that I was hoping you'd use and to suggest that you use Mormon Sunday School.
Yeah, as most people know, I taught Sunday school for a period of time, and most recently from 2006 to 2010, it was the gospel doctrine class with the adults. And I went through the entire curriculum at the time. The curriculum is a little bit different, but not substantially. They changed it to Come Follow Me. It has the same basic stuff in it. It covers the same material, the standard works, in a 4-year period. And so I thought I would try and replicate that. Now, I have found out that was really not a great idea in terms of maybe there's not enough to talk about in each of the lessons that they have carved out. So I'm modifying it a bit to focus on those aspects of the Book of Mormon that I find interesting and hopefully in somewhat in the order that they appear in the Book of Mormon. And I'm up in the small plate section. I'm approaching Mosiah at present. But yeah, I thought it was very interesting because there's two things. First off, Mormon Sunday School, which we then changed. By the time they made this a month ago, we changed it to Mormon Sunday School or Sunday School with Radio Free Mormon. Mm-hmm. So my name's on it. My nom de guerre is on it of Radio Free Mormon. It says Mormon Sunday School, and then it has a tagline on it where you're going to hear things you're never going to learn in regular Sunday school. So, I thought that was enough. Maybe it's not enough. Apparently, Cardin thinks that I'm supposed to come on and say, Radio Free Mormon here. I am an anti-Mormon, and I am going to be critical of the Book of Mormon to give some kind of disclaimer at the beginning. I think that's what he wants. I don't know if that's realistic.
The other thing is you say your name. So if anybody starts to listen to that program, they can immediately do a Google search for Radio Free Mormon. Mm-hmm. And what they're going to find is the content that delves into the history of the church and preferences factual, transparent, honest history over faithfulness. And it wouldn't take but an episode or two to find out that even in the very first stages of Radio Free Mormon, that's what you were doing.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, if Cardin were to do some kind of, self-identifier at the beginning of every episode he did, what would that look like? And what would he have to say in order to satisfy the same kind of concerns he has about me? I'll leave that to the live chat. I have my own ideas to what he'd have to say every time, but it's not fit for family viewing.
And I'll say one last thing here, which is when the thing they're pointing out is somebody being a wolf in sheep's clothing, trying to manipulate the believers from a faithful standpoint to share ideas that would essentially move them away from their faithful ground. And I don't know how they don't really notice the glaring example of Kwaku with his mustache, pearl necklace, and not wearing garments, and claiming sort of in the last few months to be a bit woke and suggesting maybe things to his audience that wouldn't quite be faithful. It seems sort of strange to me, or ironic to me, that you have a person who doesn't take wearing the garment seriously in the midst of the church doubling down on it.
Right.
And, doesn't carry the facial hair that a normal Mormon would do, wears pearl necklaces, which no faithful priesthood holder has ever done in the history of Mormonism.
Didn't Brigham Young have a cross-dressing son?
He did, but I don't think he even wore a pearl necklace.
Okay, I thought I'd give it a shot.
So I'm just going to note that Kwaku is sort of a glaring example of someone presenting themselves faithfully, who, when you take a deeper look, and it doesn't take long, but a half a second, and the things he wears recently, to know that he's not living the gospel as Mormon leaders would like their believers to do so.
Yes. Well, I tell you what, the inconsistency of this entire criticism of Mormon Sunday School is reflected inadvertently in a comment that was made by a faithful Mormon on their own YouTube. And I went ahead and screenshot that and put it up here. Now, they're trying to be supportive, and yet they end up showing how ridiculous this argument that the Midnight Mormons have. They say this. Bill, can you read this, or are you busy doing something technical?
No, I can read it. So this is precisely one of the reasons God revealed to our prophet that we should stop using the nickname Mormon and use the actual name of the church. Again, what did I suggest to you? Let's play on the actual name of the church. Let's call it Latter-day Sunday School, so the LDS can be really big and people would see that. And you said, no, let's use Mormon. In other words, you're following this. This is precisely one of the reasons God revealed to our prophet that we should stop using the nickname Mormon and use the actual name of the church so that we can discern the wolves from the sheep.
Can you hang on right there before you get to
Yeah.
the last line? Because it was when I read this that I suddenly realized it's me. I'm the reason that President Nelson got the revelation. We're not going to call it Mormon anymore. We're going to use the whole name of the church so that when people come along like me, wolves in sheep's clothing, and intentionally put up Mormon Sunday School instead of LDS Sunday School, that people will be able to look at it and know just from the title that it's not faithful.
Yeah.
You see,
in other words, you
Yeah.
tipped your hat in the exact way President Nelson hoped you would.
And they conclude this in the last line, which I'll ask you to read now.
No actual faithful member would title their show Mormon Sunday School. They're essentially, this guy's just saying that's not a deception. He chose a name after Nelson's edict where everyone would clearly know that this is not a faithful Sunday school.
Yeah, exactly. That's Debbie Melander 289 who made that comment, I believe.
Brilliant.
And she is spot on. I think she doesn't. I don't know if she knows that she's arguing my position, but I think that she doesn't. Sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
Are we ready for the next part?
I believe so. Give me just a second to get.
I will give you
that off
just a
the screen.
second. We talked about the tagline to the Sunday School. And we also mentioned the story about calling it Mormon Sunday School. We already talked about that. This is from timestamp 820 to 9.00. So it's just 40 seconds long. And this is where they get in the ad hominem. Even though they recognize it's an ad hominem, they're going to go forward with the ad hominem and say that I'm looking old.
In the midst of not having watched your show, but no more than 30 seconds.
I think they're just looking at the screen grab that they have up there on their, what do you call it there? Thumbnail?
Yeah. I was just looking at the bottom to see if any of the new titles show up there that were there the first time. Okay, here we go.
So here we are. He's easily top 10. Okay. And he's self-representing at this point as just.
I just got to say, you went from the top 5. Maybe now they're talking about overseas, but I'm not sure who all overseas. I mean, you've got Peter Bleakley and you've got Nemo. I don't mean anything rude to anyone else. Maybe I'm forgetting a few people, but I'm not aware of significant contributors to content creation across the waters besides those two. And I could be completely off.
Oh, 20th Century Saints. Don't forget them.
Yeah. Sorry. And so you get top 5 among the top ones.
Then number 1. I feel like GameStop.
And now
I'm all over the stock market.
man.
I was going up like crazy. Now I'm starting to come down.
You're crashing. Now you're top 10. It's, by the way, in our thumbnail, you'll just notice that Cardin Ellis is wearing a math hat. And this demonstration alone shows you that math is just not Cardin's best subject. So.
No, and I admit that because I stink at math. That's why I went into law. I think that the math hat that Cardin is wearing in the thumbnail is probably the closest that math has ever gotten to his brain.
Okay, so here's the rest of that.
He's the Unshaken podcast. He's a seminary teacher. He's a come follow meer.
And here's the slide that I've created. It says Mormon Sunday School with Radio Free Mormon, yours truly, where you learn stuff you're never going to hear in regular Sunday school. And as I said, this is the Come Follow Me manual on the Book of Mormon for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yes.
I know it's ad hominem to say this.
But I'll say it anyway.
Okay.
He's looking old. Isn't he? He's looking old.
Yes, that will happen as one gets older.
To the best of us, doesn't it?
All I can say is, yes, I'm definitely looking older. It's not the years, honey, it's the mileage. But the benefit of it is that at least as I've gotten older, I think that I've gotten wiser as well.
By the way, you still look better than Cardinellis, and I can't wait to see Kwaku at whatever, I don't know when you'd announce your age honestly on the show, but I can't wait to see Kwaku at the age you are right now. It ain't going to go well for you, Kwaku. Things begin to happen, and I think RFM, you look pretty dang fine for your age.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate
your
that.
face. Look at your face. Look at your face, and look at Cardinellis's. And Kwaku has no ability to say, "Hey, Cardin, you actually look worse than Radio Free Mormon."
No, Kwaku he's still at the age. I think he's like 27 or so by now. He's still in his 20s. He's still at the age where he thinks he's going to live forever.
Yeah, he's invincible. But my friend, the next 40 years, 50 years aren't going to be that kind.
I heard a quote some time ago, but it stuck with me. And I think it was attributed to Trotsky, who said the single greatest surprise in a man's life is getting old.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, man, when I hit 35, you start to realize that this ride ain't going to last forever. So enjoy it while you can, boys.
Yes. And there's also a line, by the way, now we're getting all pensive, but this is what people, they tune in for, the intelligent stuff. There's a great line in Bridge Over the River Kwai by Alec Guinness. And he's having a pensive moment of his own. And there's a line in there where I believe he says, there comes a point in a man's life when he realizes he's closer to the end than he is to the beginning.
Yeah, I'm past that line.
Have you ever thought of it that way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there came moments where I've been pretty clear in my head that there is more that's happened behind me than there is due to happen in front of me. Absolutely.
Yeah. The only thing I've got to tell you from this perspective, being a little bit further down and around the river bend from you, Bill, is it gets better.
Yeah, and that's what they say, by the way. When you get into your late 50s, your 60s, your 70s, people actually report being happier with life than those in their 20s, 30s, and 40s.
Yeah, I once considered that, thinking that the being young is better than being old. And obviously there's benefits to both. But that being young is better than being old is equivalent to thinking that the view is better from the bottom of a tree than from the top.
Yeah, and there may even be benefits to being gone than still being around too. So
I'm looking forward to those benefits.
I mean it though, by the way. You look better than Cardinellis, so I didn't find that joke to be to really be that funny.
Well, thank you. To quote Hamlet, there needs no ghost, my lord, come from the grave to tell us this. But thank you.
Love it, my friend. Okay.
So what do we have next? Do we have anything next? Let me see here. So we're past that. Now we're to that slide 6. So it's timestamp 11:30 to 12:04. So this is 34 seconds.
Yep, and I just need to.
Oh yes, this is so great. Especially for anybody who watched my first episode, that introduction episode to the Mormon Sunday School, which released early January of this year. Today's date, by the way, for future viewers being May 29th, 2024. And after admitting he hasn't watched it, he says he knows what's in it, and of course gets it completely wrong.
But this is obvious deception. Okay. There's no other word for this. This is wolf in sheep's clothing deception. He's literally pitched this as a nice lesson to gain gospel knowledge. And he's literally about to give a big fat lesson with just a bunch of anti-Mormon tropes and debunked lies, I'm sure, because that's the way it always goes.
I'm sure.
Another 30 seconds. And then I guess we'll just do 2 random clicks inward and see what.
Yes, do a couple of random clicks. That should give you your background, and do it while you're doing the show as well. Don't do it before the show. You wouldn't want to know what you're talking about before you go on the air.
Let me ask you, what is deceptive? First off, Mormon Sunday School. You're presenting it as a Sunday school.
Yeah.
You're presenting it with the word Mormon, which already you're tipping your hat to the believer that, hey, be careful. I'm not going to exactly tell you the kind of things you want to hear. I'm going to tell you the things that you're never going to hear in a regular Sunday school. You tell the audience what your name is. And I haven't found yet something you've said in any of these episodes that is you being dishonest and telling the audience. He said, oh, he's a seminary teacher. Did you ever tell the class? Because you've never been a seminary teacher, correct?
No. I think that what he was trying to say there in his typical inarticulate way is that people watching this could confuse it easily with one of the many podcasts that are out there that approach Sunday school on a weekly basis, following the Come Follow Me manual from a faithful perspective, that they might think I'm a seminary. I know a lot more than a seminary teacher, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Or that I'm someone who's faithful, Unshaken. That's a name of a podcast or something else. And his concern is that children will be led astray. I can guarantee you that children will not watch my podcast. And many adults will not watch my podcast. It is designed to be Sunday school and a review and analysis of the Book of Mormon at a college level, and actually an advanced college level in some cases. So I do not have any thought that children are going to find this interesting, unless they're precocious.
It's kind of hard to imagine a bunch of 11-year-olds sitting around and watching Mormon Sunday School.
I did want to tell you, you go ahead and make your comment, then I'll tell you what was actually in that first episode.
Yeah, just my point is that I don't know of any piece of what you're doing. People are like, oh, well, he wears a suit and a tie. Well, I've seen you wear a suit and a tie for 20% of the episodes that we've done at times, especially early on. You did. Anytime we've covered like legal cases and things, you put them on. The Mormon newscast that we do, you're often wearing a suit jacket, sometimes a tie. That's not out of the ordinary either. You haven't done anything in this show that shows me that you've gone out of your way to present yourself as something other than who you are.
Well, I will tell you that I do make a point, and I did make a point of getting a white shirt for the show in honor of the Sunday school idea. Yeah. And after 34, how long has it been? 34 years practicing law, I have quite a collection of neckties that I've accumulated and or have been given to me as gifts over the years. And so this is my opportunity to bring them out of mothballs and parade them in front of the audience. So that's what I use that for. Also because it's like Sunday school, and they might look at that and say, you see, this is part of the deception. Well, maybe they can see it that way. I could see them seeing it that way. That's not the intent. The intent is to dress the part.
Right.
Oh, and what it was about, Cardin, if you watch it, you'll find out that you were wrong. What it's about is my testimony of the Book of Mormon, which I take about 20 minutes to bear my testimony of the Book of Mormon, how it was I came to that testimony when I was 18 years old. Now, the second part of it, though, is taking a testimony a bit further and saying it wasn't just the Book of Mormon I had a testimony of, but also a testimony of the stories that were told by Paul H. Dunn. And then finding out that those were not true. And then having to grapple with the idea, which was thrust upon me, and I ignored as long as I possibly could, believe me, that if I could have a spiritual witness of the tales of Paul H. Dunn and they not be true, then what am I supposed to do with the spiritual experiences I had testifying to me that the Book of Mormon was true when I read and prayed my way through it the first time?
Yeah. And by the way, Paul H. Dunn, if you want to spend time as a analyst creating Mormon content, Ward Radio, you want to present somebody who deceived people, Paul H. Dunn would be a great place to start. Also, your president and prophet, Russell M. Nelson, who has at least on, I believe, at least 4 occasions, and I think 5 occasions, has demonstrably made claims about events in his life that did not happen as they were said to.
Yeah.
Jeffrey R. Holland has done a few of those as well. And pretty much every apostle's done at least 1 or 2.
Do you know something? I got to tell you, Jeffrey R. Holland, since you bring him up, the other night, and I think it was Sunday night, I had some time on my hands and I'm going through, I was listening to this and I got done listening to this. By this, I mean the word radio thing about me. And then I saw come up in my playlist, the one that you had done, the one that got you excommunicated, the Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire from several years ago. And I thought, I want to listen to that one again. And I did. And you know, the thought that came to me about a little bit more than halfway through it
Yeah.
is this. I say, so Bill, what you're telling me is that an Irishman exaggerating for effect to make a story better than it really is something that surprises you.
Okay. Well, that's sort of in the cards for the Irishman, huh? Put a drink in their hand and let them tell a story.
Yeah. Anyway, that was just the thought that came to me.
Gotcha. Yeah. No.
An Irish apostle should be better.
Well, maybe. Elder Holland, even if I missed one of those each have merit on their own. And for someone to go, each one of them, if we make allowances and loopholes and give somebody the room to go, well, look, well, that's, if you just understand them in this way. No, I mean, that guy lied over and over and over again. And as my stake president said, it doesn't matter if he lied. You're not allowed to criticize the man because it is wrong to criticize leaders of the church, even if the criticism is true.
Can I modify that saying from Elder Oaks and say it's wrong to criticize leaders of the church, especially when the criticism is true?
Amen.
What do we have next?
Right. Well, you have this. You have this up here.
What do I have up here? Oh, yeah. Lesson number 1, I bore my testimony. See, this is the thing about Sunday school, okay? And I want you to talk a little bit about your lessons too, because you were reviewing the gospel principles or gospel essentials, the investigator's class manual, and comparing a former version from the 1970s with the current version. It's very interesting what you do. And I am analyzing the Book of Mormon as best I can and as authentically as I can without trying to make them all balls or all strikes or whatever. Lesson number 1, I bore my testimony. Now, I did contrast it with my testimony about Paul H. Dunn. Lesson number 2, I provide a faithful and very interesting reinterpretation of Nephi's slaying of Laban. Lesson number 3, I provide a very faithful and interesting reinterpretation of Lehi's dream. Lesson number 8, I provide a very faithful and interesting exegesis on Jacob's sermon in 2 Nephi 6 through 10 and the monster in the Book of Mormon that he talks about. And now we're up to lesson number 15, which is my analysis of the small plates. Now, my analysis of the small plates is showing over and over again from different perspectives what I think is kind of inarguable at this point, at least from my point of view, is that Joseph Smith wrote the damn thing. Joseph Smith wrote the Book of Mormon. And I remember somebody came up in the comments saying, oh, so you're saying that are you telling me Joseph Smith actually wrote the Book of Mormon, right? Like, it's not a surprise. And I responded in the live chat and I said, no, I'm showing you how he wrote the Book of Mormon. Yeah. And I think it just faded off there. Was that for dramatic effect? I'm showing you how he wrote the Book of Mormon. And I've got another one coming out on the, hopefully it'll come out tomorrow night. I haven't recorded it yet, but it's on Jacob 5, the allegory of the olive tree, which again shows not just that it is not a translation of an ancient record, but I'm actually taking step by step and showing how it was that Joseph Smith wrote that allegory and the precedents or the antecedents that he used in order to do so.
There's a weird thing that happens in Mormonism. Maybe we can just spend a second on this. To be faithful in the church, to be a leader in the church, to be one of the scholars in the church that the church puts out front of a camera, to be folks like Ward Radio or Dan Peterson or Jacob Hanson. There's a certain mode of operation where you have to obscure things. In other words, you come out and you do this Mormon Sunday school and you really just are presenting intellectual data. You're really presenting discovered information that is enlightening and helpful to understanding who wrote it, how it was wrote, what's going on there, whether it's faithful or not faithful. Just take a neutral stance. The believer is bothered by the simple sharing of all of the information. And to be a believer, to be a faithful proponent, to be an apologist of the church on some level, you agree up front that you're going to obscure the troublesome data and only present the faithful data. And you're not really interested. You're telling your audience up front, I'm really not interested in giving you the full story. My job is to keep you believing, keep you faithful. And so I know where the landmines are. I know how to handle the hand grenades. Let me take care of that. That's a reference to John Gee. The believer, which Word Radio is sort of acknowledging, again, you didn't do anything wrong. What's deceptive is that you're telling the audience things that might hurt their faith, but which aren't untrue. And the apologist is always going to go, well, that's bad. Anytime you share all of the information and show people the problems and show why it doesn't add up and help people see why things should be seen in a different light, you're an anti-Mormon. The way you are a good, faithful Latter-day Saint is to present a small amount of information, put it in the best light, give the benefit of the doubt at every turn, and avoid the landmines and the hand grenades.
And one other thing on top of that, very good comments, by the way, Bill. The thing on top of that is try your best to discourage people from listening to anybody who does talk about the other side of the story.
Which seems to be the whole point of Word Radio is, hey, we didn't watch this and you shouldn't either.
Yeah, and the only one who does that even more so is David Alexander.
Yeah, and he's kind of the obvious example, right? Of somebody that goes, this stinks like a dead rat. Don't touch it. Stay away from it.
Don't eat it.
You definitely don't eat it.
You don't want dead rat breath.
Yeah, which was, I think, what maybe many had at the Yellow Deli.
It's a buzzkill.
Yeah. So,
by the way, Bill, Maven has something she wants to share as well along these lines. I mean, this might be a good place for it.
Sweet. Let's do it. Maven, if you're there, feel free to come up and let's show that.
Are we just, so I was just doing my real quick follow-up, right? Because I'm not ready to fully go on and dive in yet. I need time for the end. But I did want to just, I guess, update for people who saw my Facebook post. I gave my Mormon Stories episode 2 years ago now, and it's at, I think, 200,000 views now.
Wow.
And when I came out to my parents and my family about not being in the church anymore, I told them that I am a vocal advocate against the church and that I'm podcasting and it's under a pseudonym. And I just never told them where it was to find it because, I know the drill for them. It's anti-Mormon, and I just didn't really see that much good could come from me telling them. So I told them, hey, if you find it, that's fine. That's one thing. But I'm just not going to give that to you. So anyway, so it finally happened. This was from my mom. And even though it would have been a lot scarier 2 years ago when it happened, it still was just kind of an kind of a moment, especially because that's all she said. I'm showing it on the screen if you're listening. It's just from my mom. All it says is Maven Brody, no punctuation, no nothing. And then I did just kind of.
Maven, it's not your real name.
Yeah.
So she's
it is not my real name.
Found out.
Yeah. So she knows. Yes.
Yeah.
She found out the name, and then I lost the ability to respond in anything other than emojis. So I did this emoji, and then she answered you ? And then I gave her another emoji, and she was like, yes or no. So anyway, I finally said, yes, that's me. So people have been wondering, like, how are things going? Is everything okay? And I just wanted to say it is. I mean, my mom and I have worked through things before, and honestly, like, I'm just at a point where I really do truly understand, and I have accepted I'm not responsible for my mother's feelings. So if she finds things, I mean, I did have just like a split second kind of a moment where I was like, I need to go on, on Facebook, and I just need to go everywhere I've ever commented as Maven and just review to see if there's anything I should delete. And then I was like, nope, that's ridiculous. It's out there, and I've known, that she might find it this whole time. So yeah, it is what it is. But anyway, I did have that just for like a little brief second. So things are fine. There's nothing really bad that's gonna happen. I'm not in any kind of danger or anything like some people are when these kinds of things happen. I think the worst could be just another fallout, but I've had multiple fallouts with my mother before, and so yeah, honestly, it's gonna be fine. I know some people were really concerned, and I just kind of left it. I forget how deeply traumatic and how awful families can be to each other in this space when when they find out that we have left. And so I apologize for anyone that really genuinely worried that I guess was in a bad way or really in angst about it. I just wanted to let everyone know that it's going to be fine. And it hasn't really been any fallout, but there probably will be because my mother um I mean, the stuff I'm on, it's all anti-Mormon, so a good Mormon should be avoiding that. But then the saying is curiosity killed the cat. My mother will have to battle between this desire to avoid anti-Mormon information um, with her curiosity. And at times, her curiosity is going to win out, and I will have no idea when. And so it's just something that I think that going on at any time, I might like get some angry texts from my mom or the rest of my family. Who knows? But anyway, I'm okay. I just wanted everyone to know that. So.
Okay. Well,
And then
thank
I'll
you
be
very
back
much.
later to talk about, one of our favorites. So,
Okay,
yeah.
great.
Okay.
Can
Thank
I
you for
add
that,
just
David.
one thing sort of
Yeah.
on top of that, which is in a high demand fundamentalist religion, criticism of that religion is interpreted internally as criticism of the people. And it's such a strange thing. I've spent 12 years, other than the apologists when they get out of line, I haven't taken the members of the church and said anything bad about them. In fact, I think if anything, you go back and listen, I think you would find tons of good things I say about the believers of the church. When people criticize the faith, it's this one religion among a million religions that have ever been. It's one religion among hundreds of thousands, maybe that exist at this present moment, at least tens of thousands. And anytime you criticize a religion that's a high demand fundamentalist religion, the believers are insulted. That feels like an attack on them. And I just want to note that's what the high demand fundamentalist religions teach. They want their believers to sense criticisms of the faith as criticisms of them personally. And that sets up a whole gamut of how one emotionally processes those criticisms. And just notice, if you're a believer and you just happen to be listening, notice when another high demand fundamentalist religion is criticized, the Jehovah's Witnesses or Scientology or the Seventh-day Adventist. And notice how that doesn't really bother you. And you sort of sense that those religions are false, and there should be an ability to point out the discrepancies and the incongruities and the contradictions. And then hence, why are you upset when somebody in their heart of hearts feels there are those same sorts of contradictions in your own faith? And you should notice it's not a personal attack on you. It's an attack on a thing you were born into, and you could have been born into 100,000 things.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah. Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, something Maven did when she put anti-Mormon in quotes. That's another thing. I always have trouble when people refer to me as an anti-Mormon because I certainly don't consider myself an anti-Mormon. I know that's a label, and there's a lot of subjectivity that goes into the labels that one applies to others as well as to oneself. But I can think of people that I would consider anti-Mormons. On the other hand, how I consider myself is I am what happens when a Mormon searches for the truth as Mormonism taught him to, or her to, in my case, it's him, as Mormonism taught him to search for the truth. He goes searching for the truth, and then he puts a higher priority on the search for truth than he does on Mormonism itself. That's what happens. That's how a TBM becomes an RFM.
And I don't
in
think,
my case.
and I don't think people understand either. Cardinellis in that recent debate where John Dehlin and the younger folks were up on stage, Jubilee.
Yes,
Yep.
Jubilee.
Cardinellis says, I couldn't name the 12 apostles. I could name President Nelson. I'm not even sure I could name the first presidency. I'm just going to say it is also a given fact, whether he would like to argue or not, I don't care, that you and I care a whole lot more about Mormonism than folks like he do, that he does. We read the Book of Mormon so many times. I know you've read it more than I have. I can guarantee we both have read it more than he did, Cardinellis.
Yeah. And I'm reading it again.
We paid more attention to who, and still do, who the leaders of the church are than he ever has, according to his own words. We spend more time thinking about Mormonism and its theology and its doctrine than he, I've forgotten more about Mormonism than he's ever learned.
Yeah,
And that's not a light statement. That's a truth. That's a fact that you couldn't argue it. He could, if him and I were to sit in a room with a 1,000-question survey about Mormon history, I would, excuse my French, whoop his ass from one side of the room to the other. He doesn't know Mormonism. And why doesn't he know it? Because he hasn't spent the time to know it. I care a whole lot more about Mormonism on the outside than he ever did on the inside. And I cared a whole lot more on the inside than he ever did as well.
Wow. Yeah, the only thing I can't understand is why the pages of my triple combination burst into flame when I turn them now.
Yeah.
That's the part I don't get. I'll have to get an asbestos Mormon. All right. So let's see what's next. The next thing is going to be right. They're going to go back to the debate that we had back in November of 2021. And once again, they're going to comment on me saying that I'm not my brother's keeper. Because Sean McCraney was asking the question of me, well, don't you feel some responsibility to take care of the people who leave the church because of you? Right? And I said, no, I don't. And this is the thing they zero in on, and they bring it up over and over again. And this is what in last week's show with Sean McCraney during the Q&A time when Colby Reddish called in. I didn't realize it at the time because I hadn't watched this at the time. But it's this comment in this video to which he's responding on that show. So we've got a couple of clips in order. First, the one from the midnight Psych Ward Radio show where they mention this. And then the clip from our show last week where Colby Reddish calls in.
Down. And don't forget, RFM is the guy who said that I am not my brother's keeper. I should be able to tear down people's testimonies, their faith. I have zero responsibility once they've lost that framework and that organization in their lives. Like, even if you're cynical, you can't look at the stats of people that have lost their faith and think, whoa, maybe this isn't a good thing for society and we should be responsible in our ethics in doing this. This is the guy that said, I am not responsible for the fallout, the self-termination, the depression, the obesity, the horrible, horrible stats that follow so many of these people.
Has Cardin left the church? Maybe that's why he's so upset at me. I finally got to him. He left the church.
Yeah, talking about obesity.
That was rude. But, I feel like it's okay. I mean, it's all in good fun, right? So there he's talking about it.
You framed it
I did say I'm not my brother's keeper, but then he layers on all these other things that I didn't say. And he's also, I got a feeling, I just got to tell you, Bill, I got a feeling that he's mischaracterizing the general attitude of people when they leave the church as going into states of depression and morbid obesity.
He is doing the same thing that has always been done, which is the folks who took Mormonism seriously and left for whatever reason. They have to be broken. They have to be less than. They have to be depressed. They're laying in their bed in the fetal position, crying every day. They're miserable. They're overweight. They're not healthy. The reality is, again, I know there are studies out there that point to people being happier inside of religion versus out. But that's not the same thing as studying specific groups of people, which is Mormons who were all in, deconstructed it, and left. And all of the data I see, both anecdotal by my own talking to folks, a little bit of research that I've done, at least limited here in Southern Utah, points to people at about 96% being as happy or happier out of the church. And that matches, by the way, doesn't that match, like, as you've had conversations with hundreds, if not thousands of people, doesn't that match what people tell you, RFM, that they are grateful that the information is given and that by them having access to it, it changed their life. They took back their autonomy and they are happier and healthier outside of the faith.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100% has been my experience. Of course,
Yeah.
the people who talk to me may self-select for that 100%. So, yeah, I'm sure that there are other people who are upset, and it's a very upsetting thing. It's a very traumatic experience. But is the traumatic experience caused by the person who told them the truth or by the people who lied to them to put him in the position in the first place? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I just think he's positioning the argument the way he wants to. He's creating a straw man so he can knock it down easy.
Yeah. So here we have Colby Reddish calling in after he'd heard that comment, but before I had, and telling his thoughts about it. And I play this. It was embarrassing to me. You'll see how embarrassed I am when Colby starts talking about this, but I play it again mainly because I think it was a very good point he makes. And I say a few things in response that I think are okay. And this is from timestamp 1 hour 19 and 54 seconds to 1 hour 22 and 21 seconds. So it is about 2.5 minutes long.
So it will not go right to that spot. So we're going to have to.
It's kind of long, isn't it? So is it hard to get it right on?
Yeah, it just won't go right to it. Here we go.
Okay.
Good.
I cannot hear it.
Yeah, I'm hoping I can just say one word to RFM about a question that Sean asked him during the debate, kind of where other people can hear. And then I have a question for Sean about his epistemology. And I know time's short, so I'll just roll the one into the other if that's okay.
You're good.
So Sean's argument tonight, or his presentation, is really premised off this idea of an argument from consequences. And there's this line in the debate that RFM had at Sean's church where Sean asked RFM about, creating a new theology for people or trying to tell people more how to live their life, how to reconstruct. And the answer that RFM gives in context is very reasonable. It's, you need to choose your own path in life. And I just wanted to say, since Sean's on, and it reminded me of it, the Midnight Mormons have spun that and said that RFM doesn't believe that he's his brother's keeper, that that's the result of atheism.
I even said that.
People need to understand
just be absolutely clear. Oh, I'm sorry, Colby. I actually said, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Because I'm not. I mean, I just say what I think is right, and they can go and live their freaking lives. And most Mormons and most other people in high demand fundamentalist religions have had enough of people telling them how to live their lives. So it's like freedom, but I don't have to give you another prison to lock you up in, right? Thank you, Colby. Go ahead.
Exactly. I'm trying to inform the context behind that statement because they bring this up all the time, and I want to say this on the record when Sean's here because it was his question. The idea that RFM doesn't think that he's his brother's keeper and that he owes ethical duties to people around him is a complete joke. RFM has done so much for this community and has been there for people, including me personally, on an individual basis that demonstrates he believes that principle. He just doesn't believe in telling other people how to live their lives. And I wanted to just get that clarification out because this idea that atheists can't be a good person is ridiculous.
People don't know RFM. They don't really know kind of how this all plays out, you and me and others in this space.
Don't embarrass me any further, okay?
Well, you and I, again, I don't know this for sure, but I know just based on this and also how I've lived out my life in this creative content space in Mormonism, numerous people have reached out to me. It sounds like, Colby, that you do the same thing, that numerous people reach out to you in the middle of their dark night of the soul, and they need someone to talk to. Anthony Miller points to a phone calls that him and I had right at the very beginning when I had no clue who he was. And he's referenced several times that those phone calls were deeply helpful. Brittany Hartley has mentioned that early on in her faith struggle that conversations with me sort of off the record. You and I don't talk about those. We don't go on every show and go, hey, I talked to so-and-so this week. I took this person out to lunch this week. I sat down with this person and gave them some time of mine to help them put this all back together. But you're right. It's not my job. Deconstructing religion means you take your autonomy back. The last thing you need is somebody else thinking they know what's better for you than you know. And there is something sacred, and I mean that word. There's something sacred about giving people the empowerment to go, hey, I know this is hard. I'm here to help support you in any way I can. This is the dark night of the soul. This isn't going to be easy. But on the other side of this is something really beautiful. And then they go, well, what is it? What is it? Tell me what it is. And my answer is, it's not my job to define it for you. And whatever it is for me, it won't be that for you. Your job is to go figure out what the second half of life looks like for you, make the meaning out of life that you make. And there's no way other than giving you maybe a really rough sketch of what that might look like. I have no business telling you what you should get baptized into next, what you should believe in next, what you should do with your life. The beauty of this moment is for you to go figure it out. And I promise you'll be grateful. Almost everyone will be grateful that they were encouraged to figure it out without me telling them what it was.
Yeah. And I feel that way for active Mormons too.
Good.
If that works for you, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Whatever makes you happy, continue. And I don't try and tell people to leave the church. I don't tell them to stay in the church. That's up to them. So we've got this situation here. Oh, by the way, I've got to tell you the huge faux pas in this debate, which I think was a Saturday night. And I'm asked this question, and I totally space on what the obvious answer is, because the very next morning, it could have been a Friday night, and the next morning was Saturday, I forget. But regardless, the very next morning at like 10 o'clock, I'm going to be speaking at this huge Thrive conference at the Salt Palace in downtown Salt Lake City, where there were 1,300 people who showed up. And that would have been the obvious answer, right? That there are people who are trying to create social networks or support groups for people who are going through this, and Thrive is a great and maybe the preeminent example of that. And I'm speaking at it the next day. So maybe that was an answer, but honestly, my answer stands is that it's not my job. I do not see it as my job to take care of people or shepherd them in any way. All I'm doing is sharing truths and examinations and researches that I have conducted or been part of. And you can take that and do with it what you will. That's totally up to you. I'm not a guru.
Yeah. And we both, as well as all the other folks in this space, John DeLynn and Anthony Miller, Britt Hartley, for example, have had numerous conversations with people, sitting with them in that moment, holding space for how hard that is, and offering support, offering experience, offering thoughts and ideas on maybe where to sort of go next to sort of wrestle with some ideas. And so I don't think these guys have a clue. The Almost Awakened podcast was sort of designed to give people, without giving somebody a specific way to do it, giving people sort of a way to process lots of ideas and sort of figure out what it was they wanted to believe. I don't think these guys have a clue what they're talking about. They don't have a clue what it means that we do behind the scenes to help people. So,
yeah.
Anyway.
And it's not for me to talk about that either. It doesn't make any difference. And I'm not one, as strange as it may sound, I'm not one here to toot my own horn.
Yeah.
However, I will tell you this, and I think that I'm pretty right on this. You let me know in the live chat if you think I'm right or wrong. But I do have an advantage that Cardin Ellis and Kwaku and Brad Whitbeck do not have. And that is this, that I am a person that people who have questions or concerns about their belief in Mormonism, I'm a person that they can feel comfortable coming to and expressing those, and knowing that whatever answer I give, it will be the truest, most honest answer that I can give. I don't think that people will be similarly forthcoming with their doubts and concerns to people like the Midnight Mormons.
Yeah, there is a risk in saying out loud to those whose priority is to keep you in the church and protect its good name. There is a risk in coming forward and being vulnerable to those folks. I definitely see that you and me and others on this side, maybe we're wrong. Maybe Mormonism is true, but at the very least, you can trust that we're going to give you an honest answer, and we're going to share our real experience, and we're going to hold space for you to have questions and not to think you're crazy for doing so.
And coincidentally, I did get a call from a listener to the show who has asked me to keep his name, his location, every other detail about him confidential, which I will honor, of course. I am the keeper of secrets. Mm-hmm. Even my secrets have secrets. That's how many secrets I have that have been told me by other people. But No, he called me. We had a nice half an hour discussion today. He's still active in the church where he lives. He asked to be released from a significant local calling, and he was, but he is now in nursery with his wife, which is a good place to hide out. I told him I've been there, done that, and but he was able to talk with me. You know, he's nuanced. He has some feelings some way. He has feelings the other way. He's not exactly sure where he is, and I'm just a safe person that he can talk to.
Yeah, that's happened over and over again.
Yeah. All right. So the next thing, we have the next clip. This is going to be, let me see here. This is timestamp 1730 to 1831. So it's a 61-second sound bite. I believe this is the one that gets into, oh, what is it? Maybe if you play it, it'll remind me.
Here we go.
Still has not self-identified as an anti-Mormon. Like this is pernicious stuff. It's creepy. It's unethical. I have lost. I disrespect this completely. So we're going to move on because this is just dark. And I don't see, I've really lost a lot of respect for the ex-Mormon community by allowing this kind of thing to happen. Like when they just kind of allowed, there was a little bit of pushback on who was that Norton guy that wanted to film with a porn star in the temple. Don't forget, Bill Reel and RFM are the guys that said, oh, remember, you talk as though there's something wrong with it. When Mike Norton wanted to hire a porn star to have a sex scene in the Salt Lake Temple. Do you guys remember that? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the same guys, and they're welcomed and lauded as heroes in the ex-Mormon, anti-Mormon community. And frankly, this is just sick. It's disturbed and it is perverse.
I think that I think Hardin was winnowing his thesaurus to come up with additional adjectives to describe me.
Yeah. By the way, does anybody want to point out that Kwaku doesn't respect the holy garment? Does anybody want to point out that he's misleading people into thinking that wearing it's not necessary? Like the same sort of argument he's making about you, he could just take a much closer target, look 4 feet to his left, and he could pinpoint Kwaku as being the same sort of thing that he's trying to pinpoint you for.
Well, I was taking a bit of a different tack on it. Certainly a good insight there. My tack on it is that not only is this something that all three of them are agreeing on, and nobody's taking issue at all with the way that Cardinellis is portraying this, right? But also their brother in arms, Jacob Hanson, on his show, Thoughtful Faith, I think it is, he put together some months ago a montage of different clips. And the only clip he could come up with on me, I guess, other people got a lot more airtime, including you, Bill. But when it came to me, this was the only one that he could come up with. And so he actually plays it. It's toward the beginning of this montage. And that's the next clip that we have. And I wanted to play it before I made any more comments on it. This is Ex-Mormon Icons. That's right. That was the name of the thumbnail. Ex-Mormon Icons. That's when I said, hey, everybody, I'm an icon. And this is what he has to say about me. This is timestamp 2 minutes even to 3 minutes even.
I think there's some real potential here to make some serious money. And if you're serious about this, if you can make this happen, if you can provide access to Mormon temples for a small film crew, we're talking 2 or 3 people, maybe 4, then this producer was of the opinion that that video would be, I believe his exact words were, the most controversial adult film since Deep Throat.
I would see things like, I won't give names, but a prominent ex-member trying to sneak a porn star into a temple to film a lesbian sex scene, and I'm like,
You say that like there's something wrong with it.
Like that's not how that's you don't do that.
Breaking the laws and disrespecting people's sacred beliefs and whatever. You're basically saying that you're basically.
Or should I go like this? Cut it. Anyway, so yeah, that was the clip right now. The stuff with Mike Norton beforehand was stuff that was added by Jacob Hanson in order to give context for the statement that I made to Kwaku when we had him on our show, April of 2021 or so. It was early on in our show. It was just the first few months, and we had Kwaku on the show, and we had that exchange. And then they repeated again in this show with the Ward Radio, right, that we played first. And this is how they want to recapitulate this. Now, I understand, okay? I understand that my humor may be lost on some people. And I also understand that's just the references, Bill, not the humor, okay? You get the humor. You get the humor so much that you understand it's funny, even if you don't get the reference, right?
Yeah.
Now, what did you think when I said that? Because you were sitting there. I saw you on the screen when I said that. What were you thinking in real time as I said that?
So sometimes you say the thing that is, you agree with the thing that is so far out there, which is the joke. That's the joke. Now, part of the problem is I kept a straight face. You kept a straight face.
I did smile a bit. I did smile a bit, but I didn't laugh.
But there is one of the, yeah.
That's the joke.
When these kinds of jokes are made, what makes them funny? Again, you do this all the time. You're making a witty response to something and you go to the extreme. You even say, like, the way my brain works is I think of like the darkest thing that could be said in the room at that moment. And then sometimes I say it.
What would the most horrible person in the world say at a moment like this?
Right. And then you say it. And that's your sense of humor. And so for crying out loud, of course you and I don't think that somebody sneaking into the temple to film an adult film is something that should happen, and we should, oh yeah, thanks, Mike Norton, good job. The whole point of your comment was to go, that's extreme, but let me make a little joke reference about it being extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's commonly understood that humor, a sense of humor, developed sense of humor, is a product of intelligence. So basically what I'm saying here is I get why they don't understand it.
Yeah, there are clear reasons why they don't.
Oh, and then they go, well, he hasn't denounced it. He hasn't denounced it. And I haven't. And I'm not going to denounce it now because that's the joke, for crying out loud.
Yeah. They don't get it. That's
but this is the funniest joke.
They do. Part of me thinks they do get it, by the way. And they just don't. And we'll see later when I show a couple things on my end that there really is an intentional deception, and they sort of want their audience to see a simplified view of what we do, or maybe what other podcasts do in this arena. Anyway, go ahead, my friend. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I think this is the funniest joke I've ever told in my life because I'm still getting mileage out of it over 3 years later.
You say that like it's a bad thing. Yeah. It's an obvious joke, and anyone watching and understanding would get that, especially if they watch you over any length of time and
more than 30 seconds.
And see this, and see the sort of witty banter that you put into every episode. Yeah.
Well, there you go. I guess you can't please all the people all the time.
Right.
So now, where are we in our slides? I think we're getting to the point where, oh, wait a second. What is that? Oh, I did want to put this in here, okay? This is a clip from 1853 to 1952, so it's 59 seconds long. But this is where Cardin's going over the list of the names of the Sunday school, because they do change them a bit from what it was that, the regular title in the regular Sunday school, which is boring, just totally boring. And I started coming up with new titles that were more descriptive of the more focused, the way I wanted to do the Sunday school instead of just following the pattern that was laid out. And then he gets to one, and it's called Why is the Book of Mormon So Boring? And he actually has to laugh in spite of himself. And I wanted to play this here because I think we get a peek here. I think we get a peek here at the real Cardin, who actually has a sense of humor and is kind of a fun guy. And it's in contrast to this persona he puts on of this champion of Orthodox Mormonism who's going to go out and slay the vicious anti-Mormons.
More of this.
There's not a single thumbnail that I saw where he self-identifies as somebody who is what he is. Here's literally introduction of the Book of Mormon. All right. Gospel principles, the Holy Ghost, chapter 7. Look, let me just put this up on the screen so everybody can see this.
This is
literally just reading what's on the screen. Then gospel principles, the creation, and he literally has the covers of the book, gospel principles, on the
He didn't want
thumbnail.
that either.
Let's keep going down. Gospel principles, the creation, chapter 5, gospel principles, the fall, chapter 6. Why is the Book of Mormon so boring? Okay, that doesn't self-represent as anti-Mormon. That's actually just kind of funny, but literally not a single one of these videos says criticism of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or criticism of the Book of Mormon, which is inherently what his whole entire ethos.
Can I
So
just?
I wanted to give him. Oh, by the way, go ahead. You can tell him about the books. I just wanted to follow up and just say I want to be actually charitable. I know I've been slinging a little bit of mud, hopefully in a fun kind of way, but I think that's the real Cardin that we got a glimpse of there for a second, and not this strident zealot who's out there trying to destroy all the anti-Mormons. I think that's more Kwaku's bag. I think that's who Kwaku really is, as much as he is really anything. But I think Cardin, he has a sense of humor, and he saw that and he laughed in spite of himself. And I wanted to play that clip to show Cardin at what I considered him to be his best in this show.
By the way, he self-acknowledges with the laugh that he too thinks the Book of Mormon is boring. He sort of says that, that's actually true, because he also agrees the Book of Mormon's boring. By the way, he didn't watch the episodes on the Gospel Principles book because I was the host of all of those. He still thinks you're the one doing them, which tells you the limited amount of prep these guys put into talking about anything. It's sort of embarrassing because anytime we cover a topic, you go back to any of these historical episodes, we spend at least 6-8 hours, 10 hours, 15 hours, sometimes 20 hours a week sort of prepping for the history episodes. The gospel principle episodes, I clearly, in the very first, say, 6 of them or so, lay out what my goal is. My goal was to present a faithful view of Mormonism, to compare the current gospel principles, which has now been done away. The manual's been done away, but the manual is still current. The gospel principles manual, and point out how it differs from the 1979 version of the gospel principles manual. And then in each topic, lay out parts of Mormonism that have changed, been abandoned, interesting doctrinal things that we no longer emphasize. I clearly lay out what my mission is. And it seemed to me to be very appropriate to distinguish it from yours by putting the cover of the manual on, because that's where the focus is. And then I find some other image that relates to that topic, put the title out, and I clearly articulate that I am not going to boost your faith here necessarily. I'm going to share a lot of things that you're not aware of in regards to the current articulation of Mormonism versus what Mormonism used to be decades ago or earlier.
Yeah, and sometimes their zeal for denouncing me and you gets in the way of obvious facts that leads them into obvious errors. And this next one is one of those. Now, this is something that came out a few months ago. It wasn't from the same podcast that we've been talking about. It was a different podcast. And it was more focused on you, I think it is. I think it was. Your pictures on it. And I'm not going to give it away. We haven't talked about this. I haven't talked about this. I did put a little clip of it on my Facebook page. But other than that, we've never talked about this in a podcast setting. So this is Exhibit A on the errors that you can be led into when your enthusiasm for getting the other guy gets the best of you. This one has to do with the subject of racism, and they feel that you called them racist, and now they're going to get back and show how racist we are. You see, it looks like Cardin's very upset about that.
Whose ancestors happen to come from a different continent. Okay. Meanwhile, these guys haven't produced a podcast with any person of any race. And look, like, go look at John DeLynn, go look at Bill Reel, go look at RFM. They only interview white people, yet they run around saying it's us that are the racists. Your average ward in Orem speaks more languages and has more racial diversity than all of Exmo subreddit combined.
Amen. Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
and there's Kwaku. Kwaku's just nodding his head. Oh my gosh, he's sitting right there. Kwaku, we had him on the show a long time before this was podcast.
Is Kwaku claiming he's not a black man?
I have no idea what's going on, but I'm just saying that Kwaku was on our show and he's sitting right there, and Cardin is so exercised in getting us that he wants to say that we've never had a black person, we've never interviewed, was his exact words, we've never interviewed a black person. And one of the black people that we've interviewed is sitting right there in the studio with him, and he doesn't raise an objection. Now, the thing that's really crazy about this, Bill, by the way, go ahead and make a comment about this, because we'll get to the next part, which I saw only this time going back through it as part of the, I don't know what, show prep that I went through to prepare for this show. I know that word is not in Cardin's vocabulary, show prep. Did you want to say anything about it, or you want to go to the next clip? Because the amazing thing is that this is not just absolutely astounding that Cardin would say that with Kwaku there, when they both know that Kwaku was on our show and was interviewed on our show. But Cardin actually references our interview of Kwaku earlier in that same podcast where he makes that assertion. And that is the last one that we have here. And that one is, and when I say last, I mean the last clip for me, is just 15 second song from 11:10 to 11:25. And this is where, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Stone 16, which was another production that Kwaku was involved with briefly. I think it was his deal. Maybe.
Yes, it's an apologetic channel. I think it's still going.
You think it was his deal? You interviewed him on it. Yeah. What? Okay.
Wait a second. You think it was his deal? You interviewed him on it. He's referring to me, who's playing a clip of on the slide on the show. And it's also at a very hyper fast pace, as you can tell. So he's earlier in the same show that he says we never interview black people. He references the fact that we interviewed Kwaku. That's how demented he can become.
Yeah, and I don't know if he's just trying to embellish the fact. I mean, again, we haven't had 100 people of color on our show.
He hasn't either.
No, and just to state, there aren't, at least in the Americas, where we're focusing on the English language and we're sort of covering Mormonism from, at least to a significant degree, from the more American perspective. There really aren't a significant number of people of color in the church. And when people of color have reached out to us with something of value to have a conversation, I'm thinking of what's the gentleman who has black in his
Black Exmo. We had him on. We interviewed him.
Yep, we had Summer Rain on.
Yes, and I'll say Black Exmo was before they did that show where they made that allegation. I think Summer was after.
Yep. But at very least, but at very least, when people of color reach out and they have something to add to the show, and I can't even think of a time where someone reached out as a person of color and we went, they don't have something to add to the show. Like every time that's happened, it's been very limited, but I think we've had them on the show. We're more than happy to have those conversations. But at the very least, when Cardin says you've never done it, and then earlier says there's one that you did, notice at least the discrepancy.
And he's sitting right there, and it's Kwaku, and he doesn't correct him. Kwaku, shame on you. Really, come on. You should have corrected him there. You knew he was wrong. You knew that you had been on the show, and you don't even bring it up. Come on.
Yeah.
I guess he was too busy clutching his pearls.
Yeah. That's what.
Oh, and then there's one other thing here. This is the last thing I'm going to talk about, and this has to do with a little subject that I've never mentioned before, but it has to do with me banning people. I have banned 2 people in my history doing this. And the first one, I believe, if we can get the next slide up, this was the guy who goes by the name of Joseph Smith. He's the crazy guy with the little YouTube channel called Against Anti-Mormons, and he does the little, what are those little videos called? Jib jab videos.
Yeah,
with our faces on, and sometimes, you know, they're harmless. They're kind of funny. I put a few up on my Facebook page. He seems innocuous when he does that, but then when he comes under this moniker of Joseph Smith, suddenly all hell breaks loose, and he's making all sorts of derogatory allegations of a sexual nature against different people. And finally, he made one against somebody else, and it was Maven actually. And I just said, "You're out of here. You're out of here. You're blocked." And then I announced it on Facebook with this: I never block people on Facebook. But when I do, his name is Joseph Smith.
I've been amused. I've sent, we've got a couple text groups that we're in, and I've sent some of these jib jabs at times to all of you guys, and sort of to get a chuckle from it. It is innocuous. What I think is sort of strange is the amount of time and energy that is required to make useless videos that don't impact anyone, for which the critics are actually chuckling at your use of them. And the only time he's really been even on my radar is where he has posted episodes of ours in full, and we've had to ask YouTube to give him copyright strikes. At one time,
Oh,
I think
right.
he got,
That's right.
I think at
What
one
was
time
that
he
one
got,
that we did?
well, one of them was the Rick Bennett episode that we used some of Rick Bennett's material, and Rick was up in arms and had it pulled from YouTube for a couple of weeks.
Yes.
And he, in the meantime, put the full episode up on his channel. And so all we did was contact YouTube, have him get copyright strikes. And they were so significant that one time got him all 3 strikes. And he ended up having his channel disbanded, I think, only to then start it all over again, creating more jib jabs with you, me. Sometimes our wives are in the, by the way, folks, check it out. I think it's worth a little chuckle. I certainly don't
against
think
anti-Mormons.
Yeah, he's not really doing much effective work at keeping people in or criticizing us. It's sort of humorous, and I've gotten a chuckle out of a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this last story I'm going to tell, this is the only other person I banned. And this is a personal story somewhat. So I've never told it. I only told it to you for the first time, I think, a couple days ago. Right, Bill? Okay. So here's the thing. There was an individual who a year or two ago started appearing in the live chat of different shows. And these would be shows where I'm watching and I'm participating in the live chat. And this person sees me participating in the live chat, and that's his cue to make his appearance. And what he's done is he did some research on me, I think, or at least he attempted to do some research, and he created a name, a username, which he intended to be the first and last name of my own father, who, of course, I'm the only member of the church in my family. Nobody else joined. He was an atheist, died in the wool. He died an atheist. He lived an atheist, but he was a very, very good man and very intelligent man. And this person trying to portray my father would come in the live chat that I'm participating in and start pleading with me to do his temple work for him so that he would be able to go to the celestial kingdom. And I saw that and I thought, that's in bad taste. And then I thought, wait a second, I've got a blue wrench next to my name. So I can't delete his comment. And of course, he continued. And so then I banned his ass. And the funny thing is, Bill, is that, by the way, leave in your comments, live chat or otherwise, leave in your comments if you think that was appropriate. I felt it was. I try and err on the side of free speech. And unless someone's getting really, really out of line or being really, really inappropriate, I'm going to let them have their say because I think that's important. But this I thought was over the line. He never contributed anything of substance. He was just there to try and say those things, however you want to characterize them. And the important thing, though, for me was that I realized, Bill, that this wasn't really my dad. You know how I knew that?
Besides, go ahead, please.
Besides the fact he's dead?
Yeah.
Because I did his temple work for him.
Yeah, and I told you on the phone the other day, that didn't stop Wilford Woodruff. That didn't stop Wilford Woodruff from getting visited by the founders of the Constitution and the founders of this country. Even though they had their temple work done already, they thought it was important to plead for Wilford Woodruff to do their temple work. So thanks to Rock Waterman for helping make us all aware of that issue.
Yeah, really. That's a good point. So I'm not saying that person was Joseph Smith, a.k.a. Against Anti-Mormons, but it's possible there are more than one demented people out there in the bloggernacle.
Yeah. Okay. Are you all right if I show a couple of things here? So sweet. So,
oh yeah, please.
This entire conversation is hinged on the idea that these guys are criticizing Radio Free Mormon for being dishonest, for being deceptive, for using a facade to portray himself a certain way. He's creatively putting up thumbnails a certain way. He's creatively designing these lessons a certain way out of an effort to deceive. And these guys put themselves sort of like, no, we're the truth tellers. We're the ones who are on the righteous ones who are exposing those who are deceitful. And I thought I would pull a couple of examples where I can show without a shadow of a doubt that they are the ones who do that. Now, when you first approached doing this conversation tonight, I was a little hesitant because there's this thing that happens where they go, those guys are the liars. And then we go, well, those guys are the liars. And it's sort of like those two Spider-Mans pointing at each other, right? But I think it's important if anyone tunes in tonight who are fans of Word Radio and you think they're the truth tellers, please take seriously the next two issues that I'm going to point out and what they did. And so I'll start with this thing that happened with a fake profile named Dave Schmidt. Early on in my time of knowing who Kwaku was, there was a white young man, a Caucasian young man, who approached me on Facebook Messenger, and he commented in some of the Facebook posts. I tried to find them. They're so far ago that I know I'm looking for it the right way. I can't find it, but I do have at least one piece of evidence to show.
Did I mention to you, Bill, and I'm sorry if I didn't, but I remember this all went down in the summer of 2019 because it was my first trip down to Utah for Sunstone.
Gotcha. And what happens is that Dave Schmidt tells me that he knows who Kwaku is. And Kwaku tells me that he knows who Dave Schmidt is. And so let's watch a little segment here of how they frame this issue. I'll just play the intro, and then I'll note something else. If you want to watch their full episode, you can fact check what I'm about to say next after this, but here it is.
Okay.
Yep, just play the whole thing because
let me go back here. Kwaku was creating fake profiles, and he created a fake profile named Dave Schmidt, which was a white teenage face. And we collected enough evidence behind the scenes to prove almost conclusively.
Almost
conclusively. So the use of the term almost conclusively is actually accurate, and I'll explain here why. So let me see if I can get to the next slide. Kwaku was so in the episode we just watched there, that little clip. If you watch the whole thing, you'll hear that Kwaku goes, I don't even know what he's talking about. I have no clue. I don't know anything about this whole situation. And I'm just going to tell you that, again, excuse my French, that's bullshit. At the time, Kwaku acknowledged that he knew who Dave Schmidt was. Dave Schmidt was an acquaintance of his. He knew who he was. Dave Schmidt acknowledged, I know who Kwaku is. What happened is, after that correspondence occurred and both of them admitted they knew each other, a listener of my work pointed out that the avatar for Dave Schmidt, the character, white guy, mid-20s, was actually a common image on the internet that was not Dave Schmidt. In other words, when I say almost conclusively, here's what I mean. Either Dave Schmidt is Kwaku. That's the most reasonable conclusion, is that Kwaku created a fake profile of Dave Schmidt. If that's not true, at the very least, Kwaku knows the person who behind the scenes secretly created a fake profile named Dave Schmidt. And at the end of this conversation, this is the only piece I could find, but at the end of this conversation, you can see that I've got Kwaku L and Dave Schmidt in a Facebook message. And this is after the fact, but I'm holding them accountable. And I'm saying, hey, look, somebody informed me that that's a fake profile. Hence, either Dave is Kwaku, or Kwaku, knowing, collaborated with a fake profile, Facebook profile, and the person behind it to get a message out with even more deception. For Kwaku to now, after the fact, say, I don't know anything about this, is completely untrue. He's lying through his teeth. And the entire Ward Radio crew there is perfectly okay allowing that to happen. Almost conclusively is the right term, because I can't prove that Dave is Kwaku, but I can prove that Dave is a fake profile, and Kwaku claims to know the person who had the fake profile and claims to know that he knew Dave Schmidt. There's the first one. Now, the next one. This is one where the Midnight Mormons, now Word Radio, have constantly made allegations against me. And they self-admit, one of the moments they self-admit, they say, we don't have any evidence. Bill Reel is so good at hiding the evidence. We don't have any. But they make allegations against me. They did it at the debate that you had with them.
Right.
Which was really just, it was insensitive. My wife was sitting right next to me when that happened. But I'll show you how these guys work. Pay attention to this section of the video. And I just want to make sure I got the right timestamp. This will be 2:08 to 3:15. And so here we go.
More number on women than the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints does. Before we get started, I would like to mirror something Kwaku pointed out. This is the same man who has unironically advocated for couples like his in their 50s.
Me and my wife, for instance, are living non-monogamy.
To pick up on other couples, to quote, see where it goes.
It's the ability to go out some night with your primary partner and to flirt with people and to see where it goes.
So he's advocated for swinging and extramarital affairs.
And is actually what soothes the soul for the person who feels limited by monogamy.
I don't think he was advocating for other couples to do this. I think he was telling his own experience.
Start talking to your primary partner. And I like that wording because we have relationships with lots of people.
I get it. And I get it. I'm not saying that's, I'm just saying those optics are really bad.
You don't start off having a conversation about non-monogamy. You start off having 100 other conversations where you invite your partner to have a difficult conversation.
So, and he might want to reconsider that statement.
So when you listen to the way they frame that, it's as if I'm telling my own personal story. Me and my wife live non-monogamy. And then
that's
all
what
the
it
other
sounded
things,
like to me.
Yes. And that's what they want their audience to think, but that is not what happened.
Even Brad Whitbeck, I mean, Cardin is saying you're advocating for it for others. And Brad Whitbeck, who's trying to be the voice of reason, says, well, I don't think he's advocating it as much as he's just telling it as his own life story.
Yeah. They are conveying to the audience that this is my personal journey that I'm sharing, except that's completely not true. So let me skip ahead here. So this originates from an episode of Almost Awakened where me and my former host, Mikkel, sit down with a woman who goes by the name of River, who is living non-monogamy. She is living in that lifestyle. We sit down and interview her, and we have a conversation. Then the very following week, Mikkel and I have another conversation called Almost Awakened, episode 26, Sex, Shadows, Kinks, and Fetishes. Part of the Almost Awakened podcast is we talk very blatantly about sexuality. And in these two conversations, I'm posing sort of the idea of folks who do live in that space and what they do. Now, I just want to note, when you go to their episode where they make these claims, cutting out sound bites of mine in order to portray me a certain way. And on the episode, a couple of people jump in. Neither one of these are me. I'm not creating a fake profile in order to do it. I always go under my real name. There are two people here who jump in and make the claim that these guys are cutting out audio and using it deceptively to trick their audience into thinking that this is what I said. Bill Reel quote with more context. And I perceive that this is the thing that they are going to grab onto and try to make a story out of. That me and my wife, for instance, are living non-monogamy. So in the episode, what I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, audience, I'm going to put a disclaimer out because I'm afraid that in having these conversations with a person who is practicing non-monogamy, that it would be easy for people to assume how I feel about any part of this issue. And I say that I'm afraid that what people will do is say that me and my wife, for instance, are living non-monogamy. They cut out that soundbite and they use it as if that's what I said about myself. So plaintiff 2743 jumps in and points that out. He then says, you used that clip to say the opposite of its original intent. And more than that, they actually used it to sort of create a fulfilled prophecy of what I said it would be used for and the reason why I was speaking out. And so then SNWMBE says the same thing. The clips are
You mean-
taken out of context.
You mean to say that Cardinellis is the one who's fulfilling prophecy?
Yeah, he's the one. I said that, hey, people might use my audio to make this very claim. And so I'm putting a disclaimer out in regards to it. And then they use that audio to make that claim, to essentially repurpose what I said to deceive their audience into thinking I said the opposite of what I actually intended. And I can prove that because I've got the audio right here.
Oh, great.
And I put the disclaimer there in the comments. Basically with this idea that I know with these kinds of topics, there comes tons of judgment, right? Like you and I are having this conversation, we release the episode, and my first thought is, oh my gosh, like everybody, my employers, my old friends from Ohio, my the people who are enemies, see themselves as enemies of me because of other work I do in the podcast world. And I perceive that, oh my gosh, this is the thing that they're going to grab onto and try to make a story out of, that you know, me and my wife, for instance, are living non-monogamy.
So there is the actual audio clip that they cut out and use as if it's me talking about me and my wife practicing non-monogamy. It's a strange thing when the actual deceivers point fingers at us and say we're deceiving. And even when people in their audience point it out, they just don't care. This is the ethics and morality that these folks work with. So,
and I put the disclaimer there.
Oh my gosh, that is incredible to me.
Yeah,
that is incredible to me. I want to say something to Garden, even though I know he'll never watch this because he does zero show prep. But Garden, if by any chance you ever watch this, you're a freaking liar.
Yeah.
You're a liar. That was a lie, and you're a liar. And so are you, Kwaku, and so are you. I can never remember the third amigo.
Brad Whitbeck.
Brad Whitbeck, you're a liar too, because you're hanging out with them and supporting them and not calling them out on this. So it's all over you too, Brad. You can't get away from it. I gave you your chance at the debate when I offered for you to come over to my side of the stage, which you rejected. You are nothing but a bunch of liars. And Bill just proved it.
Yeah, it is annoying. You can't really stop them from doing that. Their audience listens to them. They probably hardly listen to, very few of them listen to our material. They sort of take whatever Psych Ward Radio says and take it for granted that they're telling the truth. And the reality is that they are happy to, eager to cut things, obscure things, deny knowing people when in the moment there was no way you could deny knowing somebody. They cut audio in ways that there's no ifs, ands, or buts that it's deceptive and misleading. And they have no problem doing that. And yet they get to start another episode next week and say we're the bad guys and point to us as the liars. I simply want folks to know that what they're doing is deeply dishonest, and you can gauge for yourself. Go watch 100 episodes of Mormonism Live and try to find places where we are being intentionally deceptive or dishonest. And then you can take one episode or two episodes of Word Radio and have no problem finding such.
Okay, so really quick, because I know that they're not going to be able to resist responding to this episode. But Carden, Kwaku, and Brad, if you do that, okay, you have to respond to this. You have to explain how this is not a lie and how you were not lying and misrepresenting to your audience when you edited that audio of Bill Reel the way you did and the way he just proved you did. And if you don't do that, you're not just liars, you're chicken shits too.
And I'll add this too, because we know for a fact that they put so little prep into listening to the very material they're trying to explain. I told you this off the air. It wouldn't surprise me if we already know they're sort of funded by big pockets behind the scenes, the More Good Foundation and others.
Oh yeah. Look at their production quality.
Yeah. I would only want to note that it seems at least possible to me that there are masterminds essentially behind the scenes who help figure out what it is that they're going to cover. And I think one possibility, again, I think one way they could get out of that if they want to address it is they could acknowledge, yes, we don't do very much prep. Somebody else sort of feeds us what it is that we're going to cover, what we're going to say. They give us the sound bites. And if you want to, you three, I would certainly welcome you letting me know that you're just not responsible for how the show is designed and what kinds of things are covered. Not that that lets you off the hook, but it certainly at least gives you a new path forward. Or your other option is, as RFM said, to admit that you intentionally deceived and misled your audience in order to cause harm to the personal reputation of another human being who didn't do the very thing that you claimed they did.
Okay, I came up with it. Here's the deal, Carden. I will self-identify as I am an anti-Mormon every time I begin a public podcast, as long as you do the same thing and identify yourself by saying, I am a freaking liar. Okay, deal?
That seems fair, doesn't it?
I think he's getting off easy on that one because I wasn't going to say freaking.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. Okay, I did not put the banner up, but folks.
By the way, I think that Maven may have something to add here.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Let's for their phones.
Yep, let me at least announce the number 662-667-6667. If you want to call in, we'd love to hear your comments. 662-6667 or 662 Mormons. And Maven, please, by all means.
I guess I should come up on stage. Everybody hear me okay? Okay. I'm just putting a last few little notes here. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. I'm just going to give a content warning really quick, and I just put all the things because I'm going to be talking about abuse. We're going to be talking about sexual assault. I'm going to be talking about abortion, reproductive rights, all the things.
If you have any triggers, get out of here.
Basically I'm probably going to cover it or mention it at some point. So here we go. I'll just bring up this first here. Jacob, at least at some point, was in the chat. We'll see if he's still here, I guess.
Right there.
Yeah. So this was what he sent you. This is actually,
thank you, Jacob.
This is what I meant to put in. Who is Maven? And good question. I am so happy to answer that for you. And I'm not offended at all that you don't remember, because it's kind of typical for Mormon men to do stuff like this. So it's just kind of par for the course. And I love it when, especially men who try to pretend that sexism doesn't exist in the church, or that they're respectful of women, do stuff like this. And it just always kind of proves my point for me. So let's see here. Let me go ahead and take this down because I feel bad.
This is going to be about Jacob. I'm taking it.
So this is going to be about Jacob. Okay. So let's see here. It's not letting me look on the next screen here. Okay, so this is starting out with the DC protests. Many of you know that I did. Rebecca Biblioteca made this. So this, I've been actually twice at two large protests. This first one, which kind of started all of this, was about making the mifepristone, which is the safest a method of abortion or miscarriage completion out there, period, hands down, better than any other option. And so there was one argument where pro-lifers are trying to ban this incredibly safe medication, which would make abortions a lot more not just more difficult to get, but even quote unquote legal ones, like in states that have bans, etc., a lot more dangerous. I have to go along for their. I won't get into it too much because I can go on this forever. So anyway, 13 protesters were arrested for this one, and I happened to be one of those 13. I ended up going back later, and I hope I don't forget to bring this up again. And that was for the emergency. For EMTALA, the Emergency Medical Labor Treatment Act. So please, RFM, like, don't let me forget that one. I need to come back to that one.
I'll write it down.
But I'll come back to it later. Okay.
I got it.
So this was a comment from one Jacob Hanson, Thoughtful Faith, on a post about that. Gotta keep it easy to kill your babies. After all, it's really hard to have casual sex if you can't kill the baby it sometimes produces. So, I know this might be a little bit awkward for Jacob. But actually, no, first of all, I'll keep going here. I happen to know, so I'm not part of Jacob's private Facebook group. but someone who is part of it happened to bring up Jacob's stance on abortion. And so I asked them if they could send me screenshots, and they were able to. So shout out to this person. So my answer to Jacob Hanson, I didn't actually answer him directly at all. I just copied and pasted the following, which are from his own page. So this is from one user saying, does the church say all abortion is not murder? He says, where has the church ever said abortion is equal to murder? Question mark. So that's Jacob. And then he's answering someone else here. He's copied and pasted. I'll make it bigger here. This is directly from the church handbook. Abortion is not defined as murder in this context. Okay, of course, the context being the exceptions that the church feels like it's okay with. So yeah, so that's from Jacob right there. So I thought that was kind of interesting for him to come on my page and accuse me of wanting to kill babies, all just for the sake of casual sex. So here we go. Here we go. Okay, yeah. So I think I miffed Jacob a little bit, got a little upset at this at me, I think, putting his own words out there. So anyway, here's where he goes next. So go ahead and read it. Oh, sorry. I need to get caught up on where I'm at. So this is what Jacob says. He says, Maven, abortion on demand and at any point in pregnancy is insane. I am for common sense gun, I mean abortion controls. Life, mother, rape, incest. And then he goes on to say, all abortion is wrong. Sometimes it can be justified, which I think is a really contradictory statement, Jacob. If it's wrong, then I don't think it's justified. So, but he goes into that a lot. So I don't know. Anyway, he goes on to say, you are advocating for abortion on demand, which we all know is protecting casual sex. Stop pretending. So I'm just going to remove this for a second. And this is just where it just kind of is a little bit embarrassing for Jacob. But again, I don't blame him for not immediately knowing who I am and everything about me. But here's an introduction for you, Jacob, and anyone else. Okay. People already know, people who know me know, I identify as asexual. I know I get accused of being a lesbian a lot, which I don't really see why it's an accusation. It's not a bad thing to be, but I am not interested in sex, and I never have been. And so at this point in my life, Jacob, despite me being a heathen atheist, I am a virgin. You have had more sex than I have, judging by the fact that you at least have children, I think 3. So we can say that you've at least had it 3 times, but probably more. And it's just really, really ironic to me when people like you want to tell me that something is about sex, and that the only reason why women can be feel that this important reproductive rights and bodily autonomy is important is because it's about sex and not actually wanting to be in control of our bodies. So in addition to that, Jacob, besides the fact that I am not choosing to have sex, I can't always choose if someone is going to make me do it. That's the unfortunate reality of being a woman. And as a small woman, there's a lot of men bigger than me. They could force me if they wanted to. So even though I'm choosing not to do anything, I still didn't feel safe from pregnancy via rape. So I actually did go and sterilize myself, Jacob. So, and not only that, but I am on birth control to manage my period symptoms. They can be really debilitating sometimes. So I think between those 3 things, I'm 99.99% sure that I will not be getting pregnant. I've done a lot to make sure. I've never needed an abortion, and I probably never will at this point. So why am I still so passionate about this? I think it's maybe something for you to think about. But let me come back to this. Jacob has a pretty unhinged take on abortions. This is actually a response to, this was a tweet in response to the SEC filing. He says, just a friendly reminder, the blood-sucking feds pay for abortions. Down with Caesar. Christ is king. I hope we lie and cheat the feds out of every penny. I'll just let that stand as is.
And I'll
Here's
just note
another
in
one.
passing that Caesar's a notoriously difficult name to spell correctly.
And also that seems to violate the Articles of Faith, which are at least on some level foundational to Mormonism.
Yeah, and I'm really curious about these federal funded abortions. That's I'll need a source for that, I think. Here he is again, just an FYI. The primary reason people defend abortion on demand with such passion, like me apparently, is to protect their ability to fornicate on demand and kill the baby if they get pregnant. Sex on demand requires abortion on demand. That's the issue. Let's stop pretending otherwise. Jacob, even if we lived in this like perfect utopia where no one ever had sex that they didn't want, and no one ever had sex outside of a marriage, even a temple marriage, abortion would still be necessary and would still be part of women's health care, because that's the nature of the beast. Just things don't always go the way that they should. So let's stop pretending otherwise. Okay, Jacob, let's stop pretending. So I will say that it does have to do, or at least this control aspect of it does have to do with sex and this really insane preoccupation with it. But it's from men like you, Jacob. You're obsessed with women having sex and men like you. And there's so many examples of this. When I mod here, when I mod on Mormon Stories, the amount of comments that we get when we have females on are just insane. And I've had a lot of comments like this myself. So actually, in fact, RFM, the comment that he was talking about earlier that caused him to ban somebody was them making a comment first. I mean, they had commented about my sexuality, which was fine. I went with that. But then they wanted to go and make a comment just about me and John DeLynn and in a sexual way, which is just really gross and not okay. And I really, really appreciate you, RFM, for drawing the line there and not allowing somebody to say stuff like that to me. But it's people like this that it doesn't seem insane or weird to them at all to do that. So I've got some comments here on screen. So I guess I'm kind of answering these here now. So these are some that I've just kind of collected. This one says, modern young women are on the right path now. Hundreds of sexually partners until 30 years old. So that's their mistypo, not me misreading it. Then 60 years of old and alone. You go, girl? Question mark. So this is not true. I mean, if you look at anything that is actually studying this idea that women are having like hundreds of partners, I see this a ton. The next comment is a similar one. I've noticed that college girls here at ASU are totally sluts. Most girls have sex with hundreds of men by graduation. Can you imagine married to whore like that? No 1 ounce of love in a whore's heart. And heart is spelled HART in that one. The amount and this the only thing that has to happen for this, women don't even actually have to talk about sex in the episode or any kind of sexual liberation or exploration or freedom. All they have to do, they can be in a marriage, in a committed marriage, monogamous marriage, and just say, look, leaving the church caused me to understand that I can consent to sex with my husband or not, and my body is mine. That's what will like draw all of these insane comments out. Just a woman saying that she has bodily autonomy and that she likes having that and choosing what she gets to do with her body. That's what brings these on. So here's another one. This is someone saying, I hope she becomes a porn star and is Pornhub's next rising star. They're just obsessed. Here's another one. Any father would cry if your daughter spread her legs so easily for a man without marriage. Stop acting like a Mormon dad is evil because he cried his little girl who he loves did such a thing. And then this next comment says, once the fruit has been soured, no man will desire her. So I meant to make this one bigger. This one, because I cut off the person's name, but this was on Brinley's episode. Dude, not having sex outside of marriage is in the Bible 1,000 times. If you don't want to live it, that's your choice. But it's not the LDS Church who made this up. Why don't you just admit you've left the church because you want to have sex with no boundaries? This podcast is so ridiculous, it's insane. I can't believe anyone with a brain would take this seriously. Typical of this girl's generation. Live how you want with no consequences. Please leave the church. Please stay gone. We don't want people who don't believe in it. But it's pathetic you have to try and destroy the church's name just to try and condone your own life. So, and the last line was, why don't you rename this podcast, This Girl's Life of Masturbation? Boring. It's just, that's really inappropriate to say about somebody. Here's another one. This one was to me. So sad that your parents let you get tricked by the feminist. I guess there's just one, the feminist. Now you are at risk of being 40, infertile, childless, lonely, unhappy, on Prozac, and possibly having herpes. You could have had a loving husband, a beautiful home, and a wonderful family. Now, I responded, I'm not at risk of being infertile at 40. I've guaranteed it. But the lonely, unhappy part, that's not a guarantee. Actually, single women, because we know how to be able to make friends our whole lives, can also still do that at the ends of our lives, something that men often struggle with. And it's usually men who are lonely, whether or not they have had children. So let's go on here. Here's another one. This is from Jacob. This is in response to someone else's tweet. So the tweet was praising Joe Biden and teaming up with Christina Aguilera. It says to slam Republicans for taking reproductive rights away from women, and it's fantastic. It's definitely worth a watch. Jacob's response to this was, being a whore is a lot harder if you can't kill your babies. So first of all, I want to say, Jacob, that's not true. Plenty of whores also have babies. Actually, like, they're more likely to have them than not. So this is just a really awful, disgusting thing to say that, again, it just, like most of the things you say about abortion, are completely inaccurate. So yeah, this is the kind of men that Mormonism makes, and it's really, really disgusting. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So consent and autonomy for women is hard to
Maven?
understand.
I'm sorry. Is this before the point I'm supposed to remind you about your second trip to DC?
Yes, okay.
Because I thought Jacob was going to say it's hard to be a secret
No.
polyandrous wife of Joseph Smith if you can't kill your babies.
Right. I think I have more from him coming up soon. This one, no, remind me later, Arfem. I'll get into it later. This is a Mormon man saying polygamy is a difficult topic, but it comes down if you believe God can and did command it to be done. And if Joseph was striving to follow God. And this is where, like, in Mormonism, it is baked in from the very, very beginning that women are objects and children, as we know, with Joseph Smith and I always say Spencer, but it's Heber C. Kimball, offering his wife and then offering Helen, who we know was 14 years old from the get-go, from the very first one. So I respond, I cannot believe in a God that both loves his daughters equally as his sons, and then who would also command his prophet to coerce a teen against her will and happiness into a sexual polygamous marriage, the purpose of which, as stated by God in the Doctrine and Covenants 132, is to raise up seed. Now, if you've seen Jacob with you, Bill, I believe he tries to do a special pleading case and pretend that polygamy wasn't a commandment, and that, it's just nobody was forced to do that. And Jacob, this is actually the first time I ever started to interact with you. These are some pretty old tweets that go back a ways. I responded to you saying that the church was based on the notion of individual rights, which is really quite funny. This was pre-Dobbs, so it's even funnier now post-Dobbs. So I responded, anyone want to explain this to me? I know they don't mean rights that should be afforded regardless of skin color, gender, sexual orientation, etc., because they fight tooth and nail against those. And then he answers, means every individual has more entitlements like agency. So then I give him a hypothetical here. What if I'm 14 and a 37-year-old man who told me he's the prophet of God and that God sent an angel to threaten him with destruction unless he marries me, and, like, I'm the only one who can save him? Now, I am conflating a couple stories there, so again, it's a hypothetical. So if somebody wants to come and be like, he didn't say that to Helen because it was to somebody else, again, hypothetical. And Jacob really kind of struggles with this. First, he says, yes, you have your agency to refuse that request. And then I say, and what about the prophet? Because, see, like, what if I don't want to marry him and I don't want him to die, but my parents are really pressuring me, and because I'm 14, my brain and body isn't fully developed enough to understand the nature of a marriage to an authority figure as high as the prophet of God? And Jacob does a lot of dancing around to not be able to answer this. So I appreciate that someone else kind of came in to try to help and explain it, that that's not agency. If one of the two choices is violence and suffering, as in the gates of heaven will be closed against you and the gates of hell will be opened, presumably, that is coercion. So, so I kept pushing to try and get Jacob to answer this, and then he all of a sudden went on a social media fast, and then offered me to email him, which I did, to further discuss it, and he never responded. I think that's kind of cowardly. So this is just another example of Mormon men not understanding consent, or just like really struggling to understand issues at play here when you view women and children as objects. This was pretty funny. This is Matt B Radio. He's got, I forget his full name, but anyway, he
Oh my
he made
gosh,
this
I
tweet
just read
here.
that. What Matthew
Yeah,
said.
he says, I get the impression that people who are mad about Joseph marrying a teenager are just envious.
Boy,
And of
projecting
course,
a
there's
little,
this
Matt, huh?
response. Yeah. So see, the thing is, and that it was a thing. He did an apology later. He was like, it's not what I meant. It was unclear. Blah, blah, blah. But it's like, no,
Maybe
it's
it's
pretty
too clear.
clear.
It's pretty clear.
It's pretty clear. Yeah. And the funny thing is that when you talk like this, it kind of makes it sound like you can't think of any other reason why anyone would have a problem with this. You can't think of any other reason. You can't think that maybe people are upset about it because of the consent issue. Maybe people are upset because this looks like statutory rape, and maybe people have an aversion to that and they don't like to see children get abused or coerced into things. It's just like that just doesn't even settle. So it's got to be envy. And yeah, you're really telling on yourself there when you do stuff like that. So yeah, and then of course there's a ton of trolls always out there. So Barbara Jones Brown, one of her tweets was
Who's
responding. She
Barbara?
says, yeah,
The
she says,
historian, Mountain Meadows Massacre.
yes. And I love that she came in to try to defend here. She says, no, women and girls often can't control men's choice to ejaculate their semen into us, which is pretty graphic, but it's true. So Jacob's response is, well, let's make a deal then. He's not going to acknowledge what she just said. That's the thing. Like these so-called pro-lifers always want to dance around and never minimize and address any of these really serious things that are brought up. He says, let's make a deal. Let's allow states to ban all abortions in all cases except for cases of rape and the life of the mother. I'm going to guess she says no, because this is actually about something deeper and more evil. And this is what's really sinister about pro-lifers like Jacob. Because again, it's like that previous tweet where it's like, I can't think of a reason why people would be mad about statutory rape. Jacob is showing he cannot understand why women are mad that they don't have bodily autonomy and like their own like freedom over their reproductive system. And not only that, it's just we feel entitled to something that he is just as entitled to, he absolutely feels entitled to for himself, but it's actually got to be more than that. It's got to be evil. And Jacob is not alone in this. There are plenty of, I didn't have enough time to get more, but just there's this idea of wanting to villainize women for wanting autonomy. And so Jacob is capable of this, but he's not the only one of like accusing women who have abortions or who are for reproductive rights of literally being satanic. That was one of the first tweets to me when I started on Twitter. And again, this was before this was even in the conversation, but just knowing that I was a progressive was enough to just go ahead and call me like say that I perform abortions as part of like satanic ritual abuse. And there are people who legitimately say this, or they call it witchcraft, or will say abortions are actual sacraments or satanic rituals, that this is legitimately like part of Satan worship here. So it's really disgusting and it's really dangerous. I mean, this is literally like being called witches, like we're going back to like Salem times when this kind of stuff, it's just insane to me. So yeah, they villainize women wanting autonomy, and it's because they want to control women. And I've been told that like I'm over exaggerating here about this, but I'm not. Here's some more quotes. This is there needs to be a moral code. Women should not be making their own choices. This is Jacob. I would allow abortion in cases of rape if it were done very early in pregnancy. Oh, you would allow, Jacob? You are you going to be like the arbiter for every case of rape, are you going to be the decider of that? You're going to decide who had their agency taken from them, that you're willing to just temporarily give them back a little bit for this abortion, but you're going to take it back because you are in control. You believe that it is insane to me that people like you think you're entitled to talk like this about people that you do not know and circumstances that you have nothing to do with or know anything about at all. And especially when going back to what my first encounter with you, where it was really, really difficult for you to say something is rape when it's about your beloved prophet, that really says something. You know what? And there's plenty of politicians like that. There's just so many problems with this because the concept of rape is defined by people really differently. So when you just hand women's bodies over, including your loved ones, your mother, your sister, your daughter, your wife, that the government is in charge of their bodies, you put them at the risk of like the most extreme because their choices, they can't even make their own choices anymore. So it just depends on like how fucking evil people are in their particular state. And whether they think, like the senator that said women can't get pregnant if a rape is legitimate. And as I've mentioned on an earlier show, the youngest child to give birth is 5 years old. So just the idea that anyone, like any minor, let alone women, obviously, who are raped, just that if a pregnancy happens, that means they wanted it. It's just awful. It's awful. And then we had a Utah senator that was saying that, it's not wrong to have sex with his wife when she's sleeping, where it's like, there's a lot of men who feel like wives are their property and marital rape is not even a thing. And it's too bad that we've got laws on the books now, which are very, very recent, by the way. This is a text from my dad. If your life was in danger, I would help you get a plane ticket to California. Jacob, my dad is like you. He says the same kinds of things about abortion. He likes to call it baby murder when it's about women that he doesn't like and that he wants to control. But if he thinks I'm in danger, because this would be up to his opinion, all of a sudden the states' rights that he cares very, very, very much about, he's okay to try to circumvent them and send me off to California to get my life saved. And it just astounds me that it just doesn't occur to him why he would need to do that in the first place, that he is the reason why I would have to flee to another state potentially to save my life. And that's if there's time to be saved, because this piece of shit sat through a funeral with me of a young mother, 23 years old and only 9 weeks along. She was in her first trimester, first pregnancy, and a good Mormon woman, sealed in the temple to her husband. She's doing the thing that she's supposed to be doing, and her pregnancy killed her in seconds. She had her phone with her and she didn't even have time to call for help. So that's the thing, Jacob. Every pregnancy is dangerous. Every childbirth is dangerous. Abortion is safer than pregnancy and childbirth every time, and even especially the younger the person gets. So the fact that you just want to say this is about casual sex is really fucking disgusting. And I've got more to say to you. I know I've been going at it.
Maven, can I break in to say two things to Jacob?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Number one, Jacob, thank you for the $5 donation. And number two, Jacob, I hope you feel like you're getting your money's worth.
And I'll make sure if he hasn't yet. So this is, and I promise I'll be ending soon. So again, this is a really old conversation with my dad when I was bringing up Joseph Smith and I was asking if he would give up his wife or his daughter. I don't know if I asked daughter, because that part I guess I didn't back it up enough. So that chunk of the conversation is missing, but this one's here. So his answer was, you can have my money, not my wife. That's what he says that he would say to Joseph Smith. And I just got to say, like, I don't believe that. I really wanted to believe that about my dad. Like he says here, I'm sorry. My dad and anyone who's pro-life, male or female, because there's plenty of women who are like this too. When you are okay with the government taking control like this, you are giving up our bodies to other people, regardless of the harm that it's going to cause us. And again, so my dad's saying here, same exceptions as you, Jacob: rape, incest, health of the mother. And then he goes on to say, like, liberal states and liberal companies will willfully pay for women to go outside any restrictive states. They've already said so. No woman with a desire to get abortion will not be able to get one, blah, 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 blah. And it's just really funny that he's talking about liberal states and liberal companies will do that when he literally said that he would do the same. But it's okay when he does it, but not when others. And that's the thing, Jacob. Pro-lifers are notoriously hypocritical. A great article is "The Only Moral Abortion Is My Abortion." And Jacob, you are the same. You're all this fucking hypocritical. And I got news for you, Jacob. Okay. There's no red carpet for pro-lifer abortions. All right. When you can think all you want that these exceptions should be in place, but that doesn't affect the reality of the women living it. So, you know what? Abortions weren't illegal when my sister-in-law died. So I told my dad this, and I'll tell you this: you can go to her fucking gravesite and tell her that it's okay to get an abortion and see if it helps. One of the first like news stories after Dobbs was of a 10-year-old that had to flee Ohio to be able to get an abortion. And it's just like, why? If it was so easy, why did she have to flee her state? And when you're talking about minors taking it across state lines, like you're potentially putting an adult in a place where they're committing a felony, potentially a kidnapping felony, to try to get the health care for their kid that they need. So I had more to say, but I should probably start wrapping up here. But this is the thing: when you give this over to the government, you give them the power to get it wrong. Okay. And that's already happening. There was a woman who was traveling out of state who was jailed on suspicion of leaving to get an abortion when she wasn't even pregnant. There was a woman who wanted her pregnancy and started to miscarry and went to the hospital. This was in Texas. And she was sent home, and she gave birth to, or birthed this tissue when her miscarriage completed, and she didn't know what to do with it because she wasn't in the hospital where she should have been getting support and care. So this poor woman bleeds out, finishes this miscarriage at home. She doesn't know what to do with it, brings it back to the hospital, and the nurse fucking calls the cops on her. That's awful. That's the things that you kind of open this up. And like I said, people have different ideas on how much it's okay to control women's bodies. So that's why you see, like, you give this over. There are states who are enacting abortion bans that do not have exceptions for rape and do not have exceptions for the life of the mother. And even the ones that do, a lot of times these exceptions are wrapped up in so much red tape, or they're written so vaguely as that they're just not effective. They don't work in practicality. Kate Cox in Texas is one of them. She had a non-viable, dangerous pregnancy, and she had to go all the way up to the Supreme Court. And Ken Paxton actually wrote a letter to hospitals, like threatening them that if any doctors, any hospitals took this woman and gave her an abortion, like he would go after them with the full extent of the law that he could. It's insane. And then we've got concerns of spying and travel bans, and of like pro-life cops writing down license plate information in blue states where abortions are okay at abortion clinics, and sending these license plates to the states that they're coming from. This is what's happening. Idaho is losing doctors. It is in a crisis because there's just not enough. They can't retain doctors because, you know what, again, like I said, abortion is healthcare. When it comes to pregnancy, there's so many ways that things can go wrong. There is no line, Jacob, where you can say, like, this is an okay termination and this one is not, or this one's a safe one, this pregnancy is safe and this one's not. You can't do that. You're ignorant. You're so ignorant. And it's just awful. So anyway, I want to tell you something. This is how I'm going to end. Okay. Back to the idea that there's no red carpet, all right, for pro-lifers like you. I know that you have a daughter, Jacob. Okay, and I know you're raising her in this church. I know you're raising her in this church where her voice doesn't matter. She's not ever going to have any authority over a man. She's going to be disregarded a ton. I know that you're teaching her that, her life and purpose is to be a mother, be a wife and mother, pop those kids out, raise them, if she doesn't want kids, or if she delays, that's her being vain or worried about her discomfort, blah, blah, blah. I know I was raised in it. I know that's how you're doing it. But listen, If your daughter ever needs an abortion and can't get one, it'll be because of pro-life voters like you. If she's forced to give birth as a teenager against her will, if she suffers like fallout, mental and physical, like lifelong consequences from something like that, it'll be because of pro-life voters like you. All right. If she loses her fertility, if she becomes disabled, or again dies because of complications of pregnancy or childbirth because she couldn't get an abortion, it'll be because of pro-life voters like you. All right. Let's say you do get her an abortion. Let's say you take her to a clinic, and let's say it's for all three, the rape, incest, and for her life. It's in danger. Okay. We get all of your exceptions covered. All right. If she has to go through a gauntlet of screaming pro-lifers, calling her a whore to her face and a baby murderer, they are all pro-life voters like you, Jacob. They're not going to care if it's her life that is in danger. They don't give a fuck. Just like you don't give a fuck about anybody else's daughter or sister or wife that's not directly related to you enough to worry about. Okay. They're not going to give a shit about her just the way you don't give a shit about me or anybody else. All right. They're not going to care if it wasn't consensual, like that she was just, she wasn't just spreading her legs out for everybody. They're not going to care. If she is able to get an abortion, even in states where abortion is banned, the reason why, if there are exceptions that actually can be enforced that she can use, the people who are fighting for that are pro-choicers like me. We're the ones that open that up for you. If you had to take your daughter to a clinic for a needed abortion, there's the people who are screaming, there's the pro-lifers who want to chant, and it doesn't even matter. Your daughter could be 10 years old and they will do this to her. They will still call her a whore. They will still call her a baby murderer. But you know what? At places like this, there are people who try to protect people like you and your daughter and try to kind of surround them and get them into the building safely. Those people are pro-choicers like me. Okay? They're people like me. So I just want you to know that. And if anything happened, Jacob, if your daughter needed help, I know some people like to think that like we find it kind of funny when people like you finally get a clue. Like when we see these newspapers who are like, I was pro-life till it almost killed my daughter. And now I see like what a bad idea it is. You could know now, but if that's what it takes for you to finally wake up, I won't be laughing at you, Jacob. I won't be gleefully giggling that your daughter is caught in the crossfires of your quote unquote morals. I'll be pissed. I'll be pissed because you made it happen. You supported it, and that this is happening to her despite everything that I'm doing. All right. And Jacob, if she needed help, I would help her. If she needed to get out of state, I will help her. I will risk a felony. I've already been arrested for this. So you know what? I can get her the help that even you think that she needs while you can stay home comfy and not have to risk jail, so you can at least try to take care of her when she comes back. And I won't do it for you, Jacob, because I don't give a fuck about you, but I do care about your daughter and her ability to make her own choices and to be safe and to have access to health care. So that's it. That's my rant. I am done.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Maven. Man,
can I add something, RFM?
$5 doesn't cover that, Jacob. I think you need to make another donation to the show.
Yeah.
I want to do. Let me put this back up. I just wanted to say again, Jacob. Even if your daughter got this necessary abortion, people like you, again, these pro-lifers, she will still be called a whore, a baby murderer, all these things, okay, that you have said. People are going to say about your daughter the rest of her life. They're not going to care if it was legitimate. They're not going to care if she's not a whore or a slut or any of that, okay? Just like you didn't care how accurate it was when you came to my page to tell me that I care about this because I just want to have wanton, casual, unprotected sex that doesn't the accuracy of the statement that people say about your little girl isn't going to matter, just like you didn't care about the accuracy of what you said about me. So there. Now I'm done.
I want to just add one little thing. This idea that people come to this issue, and I would encourage folks, but I'm going to throw it up here on the screen. There's a lot of great websites that explain the pros and cons of various issues. Obviously, pro-life and pro-choice is one that creates a lot of allegiance on one side, often due to religion, on the other side because men seem to have such a overpowering voice over women's bodies. And again, I know that there's women that agree too. For me, this journey was years and years ago, wanting to look at this issue like I look at lots of issues, with critical thinking skills as best as I know how. And procon.org, you can look up abortion and you can go through. My dog's going to bark here. Of course, it's the very moment he's going to do it. Pro and con. And you can go through all the pros and all the cons. And when you take out the idea that I know that there's a God and my belief system is the one true belief system, and you just set that off to the side and you go, what is the hurt and negative benefit to the women, to our society, on both sides of the issue? It became so obvious to me in a moment where I was willing to go either way on the issue if the data pointed me in a certain direction. When I studied all the pros and cons of pro-life and pro-choice, and I would encourage people on both sides to be informed enough to sort of understand why you think these things. What became really clear to me is that people, women, are safer and society is healthier when we respect women's ability to make choices about their own body. And it goes far beyond just protecting a person who wants to have casual sex. It really is the well-being and good of society. Who's in prison and who's not. I can't remember what
there's a lot. I mean,
Freakonomics.
It's poverty. Yeah, Freakonomics.
Freakonomics
Poverty,
covers the issue in
crime
depth.
rates.
Yeah.
All of that. It actually, so a lot of states that have abortion bans have not reduced their abortions, even though there are women now and children, let's say, it's also children who are having babies. Maternal fatality is increasing. It also increases infant mortality. So that is on the rise. So you're killing more babies, wanted ones this time, when you put bans in place. And then also people who would want kids, when you make it too dangerous to have a safe abortion, then people who are more responsible and who would deliberately want to are choosing not to. And so you don't get any of the things you want. Domestic violence is higher when women are pregnant. Women are killed more often when they're pregnant. It's just all across the board. It's just even abortions. You do not reduce abortions with abortion bans. That alone should be enough, like, for anyone to rethink this.
Yeah, I would just implore everyone on both sides of the issue to really dive deep into it, look at the pros and cons, and be willing, maybe just for a moment, to set your religious beliefs, which are invisible and can't be proven and have lots of contradictions to them, aside for a moment. Because it's always easy to go, well, God said so. Our prophet says that's what it needs to be. But when you actually look at the effect on society and on the very women who are pregnant, when you look at the argument, I was overwhelmed by the data on the pro-choice side. And not that everyone needs to come down that way, make up your own decision, but at least understand the argument on both sides. Because I think often folks on both sides, and specifically those on the pro-life side, have a very naive view that's really hinged on religion and doesn't really capture at all the ills of taking that stance. So anyway, that's enough.
And if you do want to reduce abortion, if that is something that really bothers you, there are things that help do that, like proper sex education is one of them, which again includes consent, domestic violence resources. all or welfare services for new mothers, for children to have healthcare and shelter and all these kinds of things. These all really help. But again, traditionally, it's pro-choicers who are more likely to advocate and vote for that than pro-lifers. And then I forgot to bring up EMTALA. I just wanted, so the two protests that I went to in DC, both, I mean, there was a gate, dividing. There's a pro-life side and the pro-choice side. And at the first one, when it was about the mifepristone, that was pretty equal. There were two pretty large crowds on both sides. And on the second one, when this was about the Idaho's right to turn away pregnant women and not treat them or save their life if it would risk the fetus, that one is a lot less popular. And I was surprised that there was maybe like a dozen or fewer people on that side of it advocating for Idaho's right to basically let pregnant women die in emergencies. And I think it's just because it's not very popular. And so when people say they're pro-life, but my dad, they're pro-life, but they think, in the case of the health of the mother, they weren't there. And so it really kind of feels like, Jacob, that you and people like my dad don't actually mean it. And that the price of these women's lives, that's the price that you're willing to pay for your ideology. Because there could have been another group there, or there could have been pro-lifers who were like, no, we definitely want pregnant women to be taken care of. They could have been on our side, but they weren't. They weren't there. The fuckers like you were completely absent that day. And I think that is very, very telling.
All right. I appreciate all that, Maven.
I'm going to get off.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Okay, Maven, thank you so much. That was obviously very passionate, very heartfelt, quite articulate too. And I'm sure people will be lining up to pay for tickets to watch a debate on the issue between you and Jacob Hanson.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he'll have a response ready to go. So I look forward to that.
Okay, well, great. Bill, we're 2.5 hours in. Are there any calls on the lines that you announced?
There are 3 people waiting in the queue. I'm going to ask you to be super quick. We'll try to wrap up the show quickly, but I do want to give you a chance to say what you need to. So our first one is Ted. Ted, are you there? Whoop, I think I hit the wrong button here. Let's see what happened. All right, let's try that again. Ted, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, if you can maybe make a point quickly and allow us to sort of move through the calls.
Yes, sir, I will. I just called in for low key. I was just going to call in and stick up for RFM, but I called in before Maven started, and I'm not going to call it a rant. I'm going to call it a speech, but I was in tears by the end. It's hard to shift gears. I went from 0 to 100 after Maven's talk. I was going to compliment on her shirt and say how pretty it was, but that was a boatload of information in a short amount of time. Whenever Maven's talking at twice normal speed and waving her hands, it's time to pay attention. But yeah, I'm just gonna say RFM. Like I watched that show, and it's sometimes it's hard for me to watch Ward Radio all the time. But when I saw that they were attacking you, I had to watch it. And I guess one of the things I want to say is RFM, like as far as like the Kwaku comment, you could literally replace now I'm drawing. See, now I'm off track with Maven. Anthony Hopkins as Odin. You could literally replace him. So I think you're gorgeous, RFM. Like, and if I was the
I could. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I just realized you were talking about me and not about Kwaku. I was thinking Kwaku playing Odin.
No, sir. No.
He's the one with professional acting experience, you know.
Yeah, all 3 of them have some sort of performance. 2 of them are actors, and one's a stand-up comedian who I don't ever hear a joke from.
Who nobody laughs at. By the way, Ward Radio is not the greatest name. The only other option was Sociopaths Are Us.
Yeah.
So they went with Ward Radio. I think it was
I was gonna say psych ward, but yeah, sometimes like at work, I'll say to the guys, it's like arguing with a bunch of psych wards. But anyways, the other thing I wanted to say was from.
Oh, I don't know. I did not do that. Something happened to the call. It just dropped.
Uh-oh.
Sorry about
I'm
that.
sorry. There was a third option. It was 3 flew over the cuckoo's nest, but they didn't go with that one either.
So this is, I believe, maybe the cultural hall. Let's see. So is this the cultural hall?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Hey,
Chad.
Bill. Hey, RFM. How are you?
You're on.
Colch, how you doing? Colch in the clutch.
I'm doing well. How are you?
Excellent. Well, thank you.
Good. I was just wanted to say that was a codified speech that Maven just gave. Excellent. I'm not a big Jacob Hanson fan. I've had many a run-in with him, and I was happy to see Maven hand it to no one that I know of RFM, to be honest. But just wanted to tell you guys, good show tonight. I saw that episode where Ward Radio went after you. I watched the whole thing. It was messed up. It really was. But I just wanted to say that they clearly don't do any prep when they do these things. They just see that something happened and they kind of wing it. And I think you guys kind of showed it's pretty pathetic the way that they handle things.
Well, thank you. We tried to document it. I appreciate that. Cultural Hall. I know that, or I understand that, I should say, that pretty much it's not necessarily every weekend. It might be every other weekend that somebody pays for airfare for Kwaku and for Brad to fly out to Los Angeles to record these episodes in Carden Ellis's garage. Because that's where the studio is. It's in his garage. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah,
but you look at the quality, you look at the quality of their cameras, their setup, and regular tickets to and from LA, you can probably get them relatively cheap, but it adds up. Somebody's funding this.
Yeah, absolutely. Oops, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Everybody's a critic. So, Cultural Hall, thank you so much. Did you have anything else you wanted to say before you left?
No, you guys rock. If anyone wants to watch my stuff, I've been posting things on YouTube. Feel free. Otherwise, have a great day.
This was a shameless plug. That's why you called.
A little bit. No, I called for other reasons, but I'm going to get my plug in too.
I've got a question.
I can
for you,
appreciate that.
Hall. Really quick, are you
Oh,
connected
sure, go ahead.
to the original Cultural Hall podcast?
Yeah.
No, when I got into the ex-Mormon space, I had an anonymous account on Twitter, and I just liked the Cultural Hall, so that's the moniker I went with. I didn't even realize that there was a faithful podcast called the Cultural Hall. So
yeah, I don't know.
I'm kind of like there. If Two-Face is a thing. Yeah. I'm the ugly version of Cultural Hall.
Gotcha. It's okay.
They're still around. They know there was another. Okay. They do good stuff.
Yeah. No,
Jacob Hanson says he didn't know that there was another podcast under the OSF umbrella called A Thoughtful Faith. That's the one with Gina Colvin.
Yeah, I don't believe that for a second.
His logo is also similar, isn't it? Like a blue and anyway. Okay. Thank you, Cultural Hall.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, have a good night, guys.
Thanks.
All right, and then last call of the night is maybe Steve. Let's see here. Steve, are you there?
Hello?
Hello, what's the name?
Steve.
Steve. Okay, Steve, you're on Mormonism Live.
Hi, I just want to say I enjoy your show. I came to it about a year ago, and I've been watching it a lot. I like it. And I wanted to tell you something about the Midnight Mormons. Seem to be subject of the first part of the show. But there was, in the Ming Dynasty in China, a piece of erotica that was written. The title was The Prayer Mat of Flesh, or The Adventures of the Midnight Scholar. And I actually used the Midnight Scholar as my handle for my email when I first got an email account at the university I taught at.
It sounds like this was a
And,
transformative piece of erotica for you.
Well, I bought it in a little bookshop in Logan, Utah, of all places. I was attending Utah State, but yeah, it's a book that's been stuck with me. And the Midnight Scholar was the lead character. And whenever I hear the Midnight Mormons, I can't help but go back to that. It was late Ming Dynasty, and the Ming Dynasty ran from 1368 to 1644.
My favorite
I
dynasty.
can't tell you, but I know late Ming Dynasty. And I got a kick out of the title, the book.
Well, all I know, thank you, Steve, for sharing that with us. But I can tell you that if this Midnight Scholar piece of erotica were not in Chinese, but ancient Hebrew, and if the Midnight Mormons were the Book of Mormon, then this would be evidence that they are true. I find Bill's point compelling. What do you think, Steve?
Sorry, it just FYI, it did the same thing again to him. It sort of cut him off before his thought was finished. So we're having an issue with the call-in studio tonight. Sorry about that.
Sorry, Steve. Sorry, Ted. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I think he made his point about the Midnight Scholar and the mat of the flesh.
Yeah,
and,
I hope he got enough in that at least what we think was the point was it. So good.
Yeah.
And I want to say just one last thing, RFM, and I'm sorry. The soundbite that I showed that they had clipped and had misused, there were other sound bites after that. I didn't say those things about me either. I was reporting in the 2 episodes regarding the person that we were interviewing, and I was representing her perspective. And it's very clear when you go back and watch the episodes that they're not my thoughts. And I just want to make sure that if Word Radio happens to want to tackle this, it's not just a matter of doing it once. They did it 3, 4, 5 times, taking multiple clips out of context in order to make their point in a deception that essentially had me saying what I didn't say.
Well, I think they have a career ahead of them as apostles in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yeah. Yeah. That seems like that's prime traits and qualities and gifts required to be a prophet, seer, and revelator.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us tonight. We had a good time, and it certainly went from more lighthearted to more serious, but we can walk and chew gum at the same time here at Mormonism Live. Yeah. Thank you to Maven for the serious part of the show. And thank you for watching. Please join us next Wednesday for another episode of Mormonism Live. Good night, everybody.
Good night.